What's going on, everybody? Cali Death Podcast back once again, episode 37. Here with my resident homies as usual, Casey, Joseph, and Joel. I'm Anthony. Just want to say thanks to all the subscribers, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and hit all those fucking buttons that we love you guys hitting. CaliDeath.com should be having some stuff up pretty soon here. Joseph's been working on that. Yep. Today we have a very, very special guest, one I was super excited about when he agreed to come on. We got Dennis from the legendary Spawn of Possession, people. What's going on, Dennis?
What's up?
Oh, dude.
Awesome.
We've been waiting for this one for a while. Like, this is definitely one of those core, even though it's Cali Death, like Spawn of Possession for us when we were coming up, dude, was like basically one of the main influences for so many of us, dude. Like, it was Spawn of Possession, Necrophagist, and
they're a unique leader
Suffocation,
too.
you know?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and it was one of those bands that I came across, in that fucking compilation that SOD put out, where I just got the upload of fucking all these unique leader bands at once, and I think it was Church of Deviance. I think it might have been an alternate take from the one that actually came out on Cabinet, but either way, dude, I was fucking hooked right away, dude. So awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, dude. I can't wait to get into the history of you and the band and all that stuff. So thank you very much for giving us your time. What time is it over there right now?
It's 9 o'clock in the evening.
Okay. Yeah, dude. Thank you so much. I know it's
Sweden,
Sunday.
right?
Thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
Yeah, definitely man. Pre-pod, you were saying this is your first interview in like 10 years, dude. That's fucking killer to bring you out for it.
Yeah, I did a bunch when we released Incurso, and that was about it, And then we were, that was about it. Did a bunch on the tour. Actually, we did one tour. So, yeah.
Did you hit, was it a European tour?
Yeah, we did. It was like 30 shows. It was Obscura headlining, and we were direct support, and then there was Gorod from France and Exhibius. It was a crazy package. It was really good. It was a really good tour, and we had great response. We packed everything, sold out like Paris and London and all those places. That was a new thing, Nice. So yeah, it was good.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
I would say Joel probably was the biggest fan when we were back young.
Yeah, we found you basically. We used to just go to record stores and stuff, and basically just randomly pick. If it had Unique Leader on the back, we would just grab it. And we're kind of getting into the more technical stuff. And I remember Carrie and I threw it on the way back back to the house. And we were just in silence. We were like, what the hell? Because it literally had just come out. Cabinet had just come out. And I'm just literally, we were just completely quiet. And I just got out of the car and went to my house. And then I like called him later. Like, we didn't even say bye. We just like walked out like all like perplexed. and I was like, and I called him like 2 days later. I'm like, hey, so that album we put on, what was that? That was insane. Like, I need a copy of that immediately, because that's how we had to do it. There was only one copy at the local record store. So, from then it was just all about, ordered your sweatshirt that actually showed up in the mail the day of the Palo Alto show. So it showed up right before the show started. And like, I had it on. It was like my most prized possession. And Casey was making fun of me this morning because I would just wear it everywhere. It was like, and all the first Odious Mortem band photos, I had that on. I always I was like trying to always like, you guys ever heard of Spawn of Possession? No. Well, let me show you. Yeah, I thought there it is right there. Look at
that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I wore that thing everywhere, man. That was I lost it one day at a party, and it was like heartbreaking. But I got another one.
That's actually a heartbreaking thing for a lot of my hoodies and shirts, dude.
There's pictures of them, and you're like, oh.
I had a dope fucking Cynic zip up hoodie when Vincent was in college. I let him fucking borrow it, and bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Never again.
Definitely. But yeah, man, I've been a humongous fan. I just made a post the other day that I think Cabinet's my favorite death metal album of all time. I think still this day.
Man, that means a lot, dude. That's really humbling and really heartwarming. I really appreciate what you're saying. That's amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Of course, man. No, thank you, man. Thank you so much. I mean, that really, I listened to, I think I had that in my CD player in my car. It's definitely the longest I've ever kept anything in my car. It was about 7 months of just only that. When I would get in my car, it was a Spawn. Like, so I've like I could air drum the whole thing. Like, I know every change of every part of that album. I'm like totally obsessed. And still to this day, I like, take big breaks from listening to death metal and stuff like that, and I'll go back and jump right back into Spawn. And I'm just like, geez, like still to this day. I mean, that's almost, what are you looking at? Like almost 20 years old. Like, and that's like what, 18 years old, something like that, or no? What is it? 16, 17?
2003, right?
Yeah. So 18 years old. I mean, that's still to me is, I mean, the best tech death album. It still like holds the water of the bands today. A lot of people, I mean, that I know, like Faceless and stuff like that, they were, when I actually I think I might have shown that to Mike Keane first, and he was like, what the, and that helped him. He's basically said it was his biggest influence for writing Planetary Duality. But yeah, he was, I mean, when people get on that Spawn wagon, it just kind of takes over, man. Yeah,
definitely.
That's
dude.
awesome.
Yeah.
So Dennis, how we usually do this is I say those same words every fucking time, but we just fucking take you back to the beginning, dude. Take us back to your beginning and the band's whatever you were doing before Spawn became a thing. We always want to hear about that stuff. Like what got you into drums. Was it drums first? Was it something else first? Yeah. We want to know all that.
Okay, cool. So I suspected you guys would ask, so I had to think about it, and the reality is that I can, as far back as I can remember, I've been listening to like heavy metal, because my parents got cable when I was very young, and there were 2 music channels, so I grew up on all those 80s videos with all the hair and all this shit. But there was also metal. And they were, the new wave sort of British heavy metal, all that stuff. And also, like, I remember seeing Looks That Kill for the first time, with Motley Crue looking like 4 women fighting other women, and it was the coolest thing I've ever seen, or Twisted Sister, Wasp, and all these bands. So all that stuff, I just carried that stuff with me. You had tapes, mixed tapes and all that stuff. And then when I was about 12, 13 maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, someone at school introduced me to Master of Puppets. So that was the next, like, whoa, another level, another whole thing. And this, I don't know when this was, in 89, 90 maybe, somewhere around there. And of course I got the whole Metallica catalog up to that point, got into that. And also Sepultura, Beneath Remains, Schizophrenia. I was listening to those records a lot. And then, of course, Arise, and when I got the Arise, that was right around the time when I started fiddling around with drums. And that album, Igor some credit, because that album to me is so tasteful and is certainly colorful in the drumming. I don't think he's been getting the credit he deserves, because it's so, the way he plays the drums along the guitars was super inspirational to me. And I used that actually on the Cabinet record. If you listen carefully, maybe it's just me being very nerdy about it, but it's there. It's just that way of thinking around the riffs, because he sort of created, he went with the riff, but he sort of did something on his own. It's hard to explain. But around that time was like those thrash kind of stuff. Slayer came in and so on. And then a friend of mine had, again, like a mixtape. And he played me, it was all this noise, basically. I had no idea what this was. This is 91 maybe. And then I heard a part that just fucking rattled me, and that was a part from Chapel of Ghouls with Morbid Angel, and it was the choir part. I'm sure you know what I mean. In the sort of the break thing in the middle, where the choir kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just got hooked on that. I thought it was the coolest thing. I didn't get blast beats. I didn't understand what that was. And then on the same tape, he had one song with Bolt Thrower. It was kind of an earache, that label, those kind of bands, when they were happening, because they were just exploding at this time. They were all going big, right? And then there was a song by Carcass from the Necroticism album, a song called Corporal Jigsore Quandary, with a very, very signature-based opening with the drums. And I totally got hooked on that. I needed to learn that part. And around that time, so now I'm into that stuff. And this is like around this time now, I'm 14 and I'm in school, and I see this other dude with long hair. And he's got a D-Side shirt on, and I got the Terrorizer long sleeve with the fucking logos on the arm,
Nice, dude.
And it's like, hey, what's up? You want to take a smoke? And it was Jonas Bryssling. And from that on, like, we started talking bands and records and checking thanks lists and, all that stuff, and really got into it. He was very good at, we had more friends also and everyone was kind of good at going to this record store. Like you said about Cabinet, you would go to the record store, flip through and if it was a cover by like Dan Seagrave or Necrolord or one of these old school artists, you kind of knew it. Okay, this is cool. Then if you want to be sure, you check the thanks list. And if they were thanking a bunch of other bands, you knew it was like, okay, I'm going to buy this. And usually it was, sometimes it was kind of, but most of the time you found something really cool. Sometimes you really found gold that way. So that was when that was me and Jonas hooking up. And then, so I was playing drums, and I used to play drums with a friend of his. So he would he didn't play guitar at this time.
No
so
shit.
We would play.
Just a fan.
Yeah, this dude, his friend, this is kind of funny. His friend was he wanted to be a rock star. So he was into like Guns N' Roses and, hair ballads and shit like that. So we kind of had a deal that I would drum on all that stuff. If he would play some heavier stuff that I could, have fun with, Sepulture and whatever, Metallica. So we would play for a while. And then that kind of went away. And I hadn't spoken to Jonas for a while. And then a mutual friend called me one day and said, hey, Jonas has started playing guitar and we're going to start a band. Do you want to be the drummer? It was like that. As can he play? It's like, well, because he knew what I wanted to play. Like, I want to play that extreme stuff. And he said, yeah. And we actually hooked up. We wrote a song together that first night. So it was me and Jonas and a bunch of other dudes that, went off, after a while. So that's really how it started. And then this was like in 90-something, 93 maybe.
So was that out of high school after that time?
Yeah, it was around that time, leaving high school.
So Jonas had shortly picked up a guitar, and then, a few years later, he's fucking...
Dude, as far as I remember, he found a guitar in his dad's garage.
And just
that was it. Like, oh, what if I do this? Boom, boom, and he started playing. It was like so random. As far as maybe he saw us play and thought, man, that would be cool to play. I don't know. But he actually found this like jazz guitar, and he carried it around in like a grocery bag. I'm not kidding. It was kind of funny. And, it didn't sound too good or anything, but you could totally see. We used to practice, say, once a week, and you could totally see that he was playing at home for real. So every time he came, he had like a new idea, a new riff or something. So this was in the very early stages of what was going to become Spawn years later, because we weren't sure. I should add this, that we didn't really know. We listened to these bands, but we didn't really know like how it's done. Mm-hmm. Like, I was kind of figuring out blast beats and stuff, but there was stuff happening on the guitars in like extreme death metal that was like, what exactly are they doing? And then we went to see Morbid Angel. I believe it was in 1993, and they were headlining for their Covenant album, and Grave and Dismember were openers. And that night, David Vincent couldn't sing. He had some infection. So he would just, it would be an instrumental show.
No shit.
So Jonas was standing looking at Trey, and I was looking at Pete. It was a clinic.
Yeah.
Like, this is how it's done, boys. And I just remember we were changed going out that club. We just, okay, here we go. Like, the way they were, and of course it was Eric Rutan on the show as well, and he's really sick guitar player. They just shredded. It was just, I just remember that as one of the most amazing experiences, like an eye opener, that we got to see how they make this noise. What are they doing with their hands? So after that, we stepped everything. I was like, okay, we have to practice. That was basically the feeling we left with, you know.
Definitely.
So like, when does it become, okay, now we're going to start actually writing songs?
Okay,
like,
so
from that point forward,
or
you guys already had stuff?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we started writing, and we've always been sensitive to that. I mean, we've always not just thrown shit together randomly or anything. We've always been very sort of surgical with it, and it has to work. It has to sort of create some vibe or atmosphere or something. But then we sort of played on, and we started the band we got together at the time. This is like 96, maybe 95, 96. It was me and Jonas and a couple of other guys, and we actually released a demo. But the thing was that we, at the time, we were more focused on the Swedish sound. When I say Swedish, it was sort of a mix between, you know, Dissection, Eucharized, Edge of Sanity, maybe you know, little hints of this and that. Way melodic, but different types of melodies. The more Swedish, if you could say that, if that makes sense, you know. But I kept the drums very not the usual Swedish drum, but it was more like blast and double bass and stuff like that. So I thought we had something going, like something unique. And again, like the stuff that Jonas wrote, the melodies were really good, like really solid, good melodies with harmonies and all that stuff. But we made the demo, and we made it at my house, and it was so shitty that it got like totally slaughtered. And it kind of made it deflated us. It was like, not that we care about critics, but it just became, fuck this. But in the back of my mind and Jonah's mind, we had always been talking about doing something the more American style. And we'd actually, I think we had written a little bit on the side, like, let's do this some other time. We will do it someday. And when Hedon, as the band was called, when that sort of went away, it was just like dropped. It was a weird thing. We didn't communicate, and it was just a strange time. We just called each other and it's like, hey, let's do this Spawn. And Jonas, we called it Spawn Obsession very early. It was Jonas who coined that. And right about that time, there had been a rumor about an old childhood friend of mine, actually, who I hadn't seen in years. And people were saying he's really good at guitar. He plays a lot of solos and stuff. And this was Jonas Karlsson, who played the lead guitar on Cabinet and Noctambulent. And I was like, really? And then you know how it is, like locally, you hear someone who doesn't play an instrument, say, oh, he's so good. And you check him out. It's like, no, he sucks. So I met him, and we sort of had a little jam, and I could totally see, like, man, this guy could play. Like, and not only that, but he was so hungry. I mean, ridiculous. Yeah. He was just playing all the time. And then I remember when he got his 7-string, he wanted a 7-string because he was a big Steve Vai fan and Trey fan and stuff like that. And boy, he was just like shredding like sweeps and just all day, like 10 hours, like going nuts. And so we asked him, like, hey, do you want to be part of this thing? And he was like, yeah. It was like I remember the first time we played, I think we were playing Dirty Priest at the time, and he basically learned Dirty Priest on the first rehearsal, just standing there learning it. He's quite special. So we were like, totally, yeah, let's keep him. and he's a cool dude, you know. So
how long?
Just the three of us.
Yeah. So how long was it until you guys actually did the Forbidden demo?
Yeah.
Which, by the way,
So
I have a physical copy of. Like, it was one of those audible yes when I found it in Amoeba in San Francisco, dude. I was like, it was like $6 used, dude, and I'm like, nobody knows how fucking big of a gem this is, dude. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's awesome. Well, what happened there? We because up to this point we more or less just practiced and wrote and practiced, and it was like not thinking really about, are we going to take the band to the next level? So we started talking about that, and let's record something. And that was, maybe I should mention that too, because the studios, there were 2 or 3 studios in Sweden that by this time had recorded all the prolific sort of bands. And you know, there was Abyss Studio, and I think Fredman was also running pretty hard, and Sunlight was there. But so we weren't sure where to go with this. And then turns out that Carlson, the guitar player, he had been an intern at a local studio, well, about an hour away. We're like, well, what's that? Like, no one's heard of this studio. And he was like, yeah, but it's a good studio, dude, and blah, blah, blah. So we made a deal and went down there, and the guy who engineered us turned out that he was a metalhead, and he got into Spawn. He was like, this, I don't understand really what you're doing, but he really tried and he got into it. And he was also a big part creating the Spawn Obsession sound, and he's been with us on every recording, really.
No shit.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So that was that. Like, we made the demo. Yeah.
Wasn't there like was it Flat Pig Studios or something like that? Or I remember like I emailed someone because I was at this point when I found out Cabinet and was listening to it all the time. I was really intrigued with the guitar tone, because the guitar tone really didn't have much. It didn't have much distortion on it. It was like, and that's more, you see that more common nowadays. You see a lot of bands doing that more, but it really was still heavy. But because of not having that much distortion, you could hear all the riffs. You can hear everything like come through like super clear. And so I remember I emailed something Pig Studios or something like that. Yeah, I emailed him and was like, what did you do for the guitar? Well, when he like gave me all the tips and stuff like that, it was super helpful and nice and stuff. But that's still, I mean, to this day, as its own signature sound, staying aggressive sounding, but not having too much gain on there. You know, it's still, that was the kind of signature Spawn guitar sound, you know, where everything comes through clear. It's heavy, but it's not super overly distorted.
No, and you're very right. And what happened was that we had done the demos. We did 2 demos, right? And at the time, like the first demo was made with a small little transistor Marshall amp, like a small 60 watts or something. And I forget what we used on the second demo. So when the album came around, the guy in the studio said, listen, you got to figure out a guitar sound. And I asked the guys, like, what type of sound? And it was, again, like one of those things, you know what you don't want, and it's hard to like put into words. And you know, it's like, I don't know this, blah, blah, blah. So I emailed, or I called Rob down in Flat Pig, because I'd known him before. That's another studio down in Malmö. And we had been friends for years. And so and he was a Spawn fan. So I asked him, like, hey, we're going to do the first album now, and we're not sure about the sound. And he said immediately, I remember, and I called him because he said, what you guys want is Triaxis. Mesa Triaxis. Mm-hmm. I never heard of it. We didn't know what that was. And he said, I've got one, and I know what kind of tone you're looking for. Let me set it up for you, and I'll come up to the. So we drove up to the studio, and left it there, and it was like, okay, and we plugged in, and it was right there. It was like, oh yeah, that was it. He just knew. I was, to this day, I'm still very impressed by. Because he knew our music, our style. And I told him we sort of need the notes to, like you said, shine through. It has to be able, you know, listenable. And he knew. He just like, that's the one you need, guys. And that was the one. I think they maybe tweaked it a little bit in the studio afterwards, but that was Rob who got that.
Rob, that's right. Yeah. So another question I had, I didn't look into this at all, but I know you did vocals on the first two albums, or or all of them, or what did you do vocals on?
All of them.
All of them. So did you, when you guys were initially jamming, did you guys just didn't have a singer, or you're like, I'm just going to record it like this and we'll find someone live, or what was the plan going into that?
There was no plan, because that was even back in the demo. And when we were recording, I think it was like a week before we went into the studio, we stopped and I said, man, we don't have a singer. And oh yeah, that's right. We're not instrumental. I mean, really, we were just silly like that. So then Jonas, because I had done a demo where I'd done some vocals on, and Jonas had heard that, and he said, I like your vocals. You can do the vocals. It's just a demo. We'll figure it out later, man. We'll get someone, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote I did the lyrics and the patterns. And I remember clearly that before I went into the booth, Jonas said to me, I have no idea how you're going to do these vocals on these riffs, on these parts. I had it was so funny.
You run it by him. You had it mapped out, but he never heard it
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I didn't tell anybody. And then I just remember standing in there and doing it. I was just like, man, I hope they like it. And then I got out and he just smiled. I just remember there was it was a part in Dirty Priest, I think. And he said like, man, that was awesome. I didn't expect that at all. Like, wow. So, and that was of course a boost. So when we continued, it's like, I'll do the vocals on this one too. Like that works. And then that sort of turned around where Jonas would say, you are doing the vocals. Like, we're not getting a vocalist to do it.
Yeah.
You're going to do them instead. So that was kind of, and
it works very well with your music, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
It works very well.
I also think that it doesn't have anything to do with the voice, but and like anybody who plays music and everything, everybody has their own style. But I prefer usually when the vocals are more rhythmically based and not so melody based, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes you'll hear guitar players sing along a melody when it's like when they're growling, and I don't know. It doesn't. It's the vocals should sort of have their own little life, but it should intersect and connect with the rest of the song or something. So it worked out pretty good. My reference were the drums, and it kind of it had a good marriage with the guitars.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like your unique vocal style, like is also as unique as the guitar tone and just everything about it, which makes it so sick. Also, and we've already interviewed a few bands that have like referenced you as influences to their vocal styles. With all of that, like the faster stuff, right? Okay. And just super rhythmic and tight.
Let me tell you about that fast stuff. This is kind of funny. I reflected on this years later, because when we did the first demo, I had done the vocals and I had written it the way I thought it should be done. So when we go in and I do some, I forget what part, but there's the first part that came out that was a fast part. They looked at me and said what's this? And I was like, yeah, that's the way it's got to be. But that's impossible. It's like too fast. And I never reflected on that when I was doing it, because in my mind, this is the way it should be done. As a drummer, it's like this, I want this part. And then you work on that part until you get it, because that's the way it should be with the music, whatever. And it was the same thing with the vocals. The problem came, of course, when you're like going to dub it and you're going to do the screamer and stuff. And we didn't have a click track. So it was basically just going one take and just like nailing it. And of course, the producer coming from, more like working with famous Swedish artists and stuff like that, he was like, no. It has to be locked in. I want to hear every single syllable and blah, 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 So it was pretty tough doing that stuff. And I didn't think about it like that. And then people reacted to it and said, man, that's fast. But in the beginning, I never really thought about it in that way. I realized that when people started telling me it was fast. of course it was hard, but that to this day I think it should be fast on those things. And there were a few that did it, like Clem Benton did it on a few times on the first Deicide album, and some people went pretty nuts with it. But thanks for the compliment. I mean,
it's definitely become more prevalent now. Like you hear a lot of the vocalists nowadays, they're trying to, go faster and faster and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it paved the way for a lot of that. I mean, a lot of them, I think, like what's that one? There's like a rapper that's really fast. What's his name? Tech-9 or something. A lot of like the kids of the metal, like the newer metal kids and stuff are like kind of do that kind of like Tech-9 style mixed with like Spawn. It's like it's one of the first like bands I could think of with those super ridiculously lightning fast vocals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
definitely.
That's important to mention that there was never any prestige in it. It was always accordingly to the music. That was the whole key. That it shouldn't overshine anything. It should be locked in, and it just feels right for the song. That of course became slightly problematic when we did Incurso, and we'll get to that. But some of that vocal stuff was really hard to perform.
And you did a lot of that stuff in Visceral Bleeding, right? Yeah. Visceral Bleeding was the other band. So when did Visceral Bleeding come into? Was that your project, or how did that? Tell me about Visceral Bleeding.
Well, what happened there was they were another local band parallel to us, and I sort of knew the drummer. It makes sense that you bring it up, actually, now when I think about it, because he's my second cousin, and they were playing and we were playing, and I think what happened was basically they didn't have a vocalist, so I said, well, I can do some vocals, and we needed a bass player, and it turns out that Nick had played bass in some punk band or something. So, well, why don't you just come in? And he had that big Alex Webster hairdo and all that stuff. So it's like, yeah, you're perfect. And he spent time with the bass and practiced and all that stuff. So, and it kind of became that Visceral Bleeding would sort of, even though the first Visceral Bleeding, I believe it came out before Cabinet came out.
Yeah, that was an earlier one. Yeah.
Yeah. But the Spawn demo was, I think that sort of they saw that what we were doing was sort of working, was a working formula. So they sort of, and I was in the band, so it was like really no problem to set up with the studio and labels and stuff like that. It sort of worked out, but
that was a killer fucking record too, dude. Like Cabinet and that together, it was like, whoa, what the fuck are these guys doing over there?
No, we're like fucking Sweden, man. Jesus, calm down.
I think you even like were in that interview that we did. I think that's what you were. That was your joke. It's like, all our influence came from Sweden.
yeah.
But we were talking about Spawn. Well, we did Maryland Death Fest a while ago, and they did a backstage interview, and Joel and I are fucking hammered, dude. So it's like it's really hard to actually understand what we're trying to say. But he did reference like all we just hired a bunch of Swedish people to do our album. But really, what he was saying is like, that was my influence, dude. Like Spawn of Possession is the reason why we're fucking one of the main reasons why I'm doing this shit.
Oh, cool.
That's how we felt then, dude.
Yeah.
And trying to do those fast vocals too. I think I got a little bit here and there in cryptic, but dude, I was just listening to you say it's like writing before you actually like know it's possible. I've run into that many times on this. There was a severed part that like after I wrote it and performed or recorded it, then I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be hard live. And then doing that song, I would always dread that song's coming because there's going to be this one part where I just nonstop I'm doing vocals for a certain amount of time. I don't know where I'm going to fucking breathe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but that's a good point, because in the studio I always have that's kind of sort of a handicap because I was playing the drums, so I always felt well, I'm going to do the drums on stage. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it was like, it was fast stuff. It was so fast that at times, you know, if I would stumble on words and stuff, like you can do a punch in with the drums or the guitars and stuff. But man, we tried punching in the middle of a sentence and it just didn't work. You could totally hear it. It was something because it's so dynamic and you know, so it was basically, no, dude, you have to nail it. It was that attitude, like you have to fucking nail this. So that was,
it's much more gratifying when you actually do nail it too, though, you know?
Yeah. But and again, it's funny too, because I didn't realize that the way you use words, how you use vowels and syllables and stuff. Some are easier when you connect, some that sort of flow better, and some are way harder. But then I realized, you know, it was almost like the way the music is. It's like, no, wait a minute, I'm not going to compromise the lyrics because I'm lazy. Like, I'm going to write it the way it should be written. You know, I fucking told myself that. And then, of course, like, especially on the last album, I did you know, where the vocal is dubbed with the screamer like over the growl. I put a lot of that in there, and it was just because it has to be there, because it's going to sort of elevate the brutality or whatever. You know, you just feel it. It's like, okay, here's a part. But then when you're in the studio, and I think we did it twice, so you get I think we did left right with that, and that's just, and nailing it and getting it tight on, like you said, that stuff is grueling. It's
a lot easier on paper.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
go ahead.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned it was Jonas that came up with the name of the band, Spawn of Possession, but you were writing the lyrics. So were you inspired by the same sort of stuff as him, like the possession kind of concept and all that?
Well, that was the thing, like the name Spawn of Possession, because Jonas had his dad had like a home studio that he weren't allowed to touch, but he did anyway, I guess. And he sort of made these crappy demos that was super funny. They were really disturbing. It was like if David Lynch would make like an album that reflected his films or something. They were really disturbing. And I think he called one of those projects, he called Spawn of Possession, I think that's where we got it. And I said, that's a great name. Let's just say, what is the name? Like, who knows? You know, it was basically that. And then, like when we met and we connected on music, but also on movies, because he had like a huge horror film collection. He had all these VHS tapes, like every single different versions, different cuts, blah, blah, blah. And I would borrow a bunch from him. He had like some really disturbing didn't even want to watch, but he watched them all. He knew exactly, like he had that catalog in his head. So we would talk about it. And one thing we connected on was, like you said, the whole with, you know, The Exorcist being the sort of, you know, the totality of it all. But, you know, the Amityville murders and stuff like that, and haunted stuff and possession. And so we connected on that, and we talked a lot. I just remember we would talk about, you know, watching documentaries and, you know, reading articles and stuff. So it was basically like, so a couple of lyrics came up. And then I just remember when I said, what if we do the whole album about that? It's like, yeah, cool. Because again, you know, I'm sure you guys know, it's like, it's not that easy to come up with just lyrics on the spot. It's kind of hard, you know, if you want them to mean something and blah, 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 all these things, you know. You want them to be exciting and you want to have some sort of connection with them. But certainly at that time, we were kind of steeped into that world, you know, occult and Crowley and all that stuff. Not that we were, you know, we weren't like
practicing magician.
No,
you're just, it's fun stuff, dude. It's all really fun stuff.
Really so it was basically that made a theme, you know.
Was there one point, I remember, so you had the live vocalist that had like dreadlocks when I saw you in Palo Alto. Was there a point, so was everyone at that time in the band named Jonas except you? Because Nick was Jonas, right? Wasn't that Nick?
Nick is Nick.
Oh, I thought it said, okay. I thought it was like Nick, but he was Jonas, but he went by Nick or something like that. Okay.
No.
I was going to be like Dennis and the Jonases.
Yeah. No, but his name was Jonas too. So we all called each other, but everyone went by their last name.
Oh, okay.
But what happened there was when we recorded in the studio was also like a production company and a record company, and they had found this sort of, I guess you could say, like thrash metal, thrash death band along the lines of a little bit of Pantera, a little At the Gates kind of thing, young guys. And the vocals there was Jonas, and I spoke to him a few times. We met in the studio. They were down working on something, and cool guy. It was basically that. And then when we signed with Unique Leader, and no, it was actually, before that we had another dude step in that we actually offered the spot in Spawn, and he said no. He was going to the university, so it's like that. So when the tour came up, I basically just called Jonas out of the blue and said, "Hey man, do you want to travel Europe for a month, like on a van tour?" And I will be eternally thankful, because he's that type of person. He was like, yeah. He didn't ask him. He was like, yeah, I'll be there. That's cool. And he came with his little, knapsack, basically. Like, yeah, let's go. He's like,
he still had the grocery bag.
Yeah. It was, he's that type of person. He just drops everything. Just, I want to go on tour. Fuck it. He's that kind of guy. And that's exactly what you need to be if you're going to go tour for months without end, So that was perfect. And he's a good frontman too, and he enjoyed it, and he learned the stuff. So
what was that first tour? What was the lineup for that tour?
Oh man, that was Vile was headlining, and then there was Disavowed was direct support, and then there was actually two bands, but they did half the tour each because they had some of the same members in them. And the first leg was a band called Mangled, and the other part was Inhume, more grindcore kind of.
Yeah, I remember both of those bands.
And that was fucking great experience. That was super fun, like really cool. All those guys in Vile. I remember the vocalist. Fuck was his name? Juan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He lives around here.
Like funny, he was kind of strange dude. Like and then of course the Disavow guys. Like I don't know if you guys have met them.
I don't think so.
Oh man, the coolest people on the planet. They really took us under their wing because they had done. I think they're done the bloodletting at this point, and they were just like super cool to us and helped us out. And because we'd done like 3 shows, and then we went on tour. Like nothing locally, nothing. We had basically 0 stage experience, and those guys were really helpful. I remember their old drummer Robbie. He helped me every night with the drums, set it up with the cymbals. Because you're under pressure, man. It's like you got to play and perform and all that. But they were just really, really cool cats. And it was a fun, good experience to do that, even though there was the bands and stuff. But it worked out very good. We didn't make any money, of course, but fuck it, we got to play.
Get the experience.
Who knows somebody who has made money on their first tour?
Definitely in the red. Yeah.
Maybe Alex Bent. Who knows? Because his first tour was like Cannibal or something.
He was touring with his dad. Remember? He was doing that shit.
Or that one hardcore band he mentioned. But I was going to ask how the connection. If you was it through Vile that you had the connection to Unique Leader, or was the connection to Unique Leader there before the tour?
I'll tell you, man, what happened with that. When we had done the first demo, I made a list of labels, right, as you do. So I had like the big ones, the Nuclear Blast and the Eric and blah blah blah, and then I had small, mid, and small. Like let's give everyone one, okay? Well, right before I got to. Well, we actually hadn't gotten the CDs from the pressing. They got delayed because we had to change pressing company, because it turns out that the fucking pressing company said no because they were religious.
Oh man.
It was a Christian company, believe it or not. So they were like, no, we can't sort of promote this. And it's like, dude, it's business. And they were like, no, we don't want your money. So we had to
Satan.
Yeah, they weren't too fond of us. So when before we got the CDs, someone said, I have a lot of connections in the industry. So if you give me the CDs, I will get you a deal. And of course, as you know, that would never ever happen now, but then we thought it was a good idea. And I even handed the fucking list with the labels and said, just whatever you do, just make sure these guys gets a copy. And of course, nothing happened. And of course, the dude stopped taking our calls. And it was just one of those things that you hear a lot of people, and it happened to Spawn, for sure. Fuck. So that was a bummer. And the fact was that it was like, fuck this, we want our CDs back and so we can send it out. But there was some extraordinary circumstances, kind of weird, that made the second demo happening, because we were actually very happy with the Forbidden. We thought we can land a deal with this. But the problem was that the CDs never reached any label, and we didn't have the CDs. And during this time, Carlson went to a music store and got a real badass high-end guitar effect, like an Eventide or something like that Steve Vai and all the great guitar players used. It was very expensive, like $4,000 or $5,000. And he got this and brought it home, played it for a week, and then was like, "No, it's not for me." Took it back to the store, and the store went, No. You keep that. Fuck you. So he had to keep it, and he didn't want it. So he was like, "I don't know what to do with this." So he called the studio, because the guy in the studio is a gearhead. He loves that high-end tech stuff. And he said, "Okay, I'll take it off you. I'll give you some money, and then the rest I'll give you in studio time, so you can make some sort of profit on it." So that's how, and we weren't ready. We were like, we don't even have the songs. So that's why, one of the reasons, if you listen to the second demo, the song Spawn Obsession is on there, but it's not complete. So if you compare that to the record, there's a whole part in the middle of the whole section in the middle of the song on the record that is not on the demo. And this is one of the reasons, because it was sort of rushed to do. So when we get the church demo, I take my list and I'm throwing out the CDs. And one of the first cats we got response within 10 days from 3 labels. And one of those people were Eric. And he was like, "Why haven't I heard about you guys?" And I was like, "Well, you're supposed to have a Forbidden. I never heard of you guys. Never got any CD. I want to sign you right now." That was it. Like, I want you guys. And it would, like 2 other labels, and they said the same thing. Like, we want to sign you. But we went with Unique Leader, which, of course, there was totally the right choice. And that's why, and Eric said, like, what do you need from me? Like, well, we need so-and-so to record this album. And I also said, it was so funny. I said, we want to go on tour, like crazy. And he was like, "Yeah, okay." It's like, no, you don't understand. I want that in writing. And he was like, "No, you don't understand. Like, most bands, they don't go on tour. Most bands, they stay at home. So if you guys want to go on tour, I promise you I'm going to get you on tour. Because it's hard work and there's no money and blah, 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 So I didn't know that at the time, And I didn't really care either. We just want to try to get out there and play. So that's how the Cabinet album happened, And he came through on everything. All his promises, he was like, "I'll get that done. You can tour the US, you can tour Europe." And he made that happen. So that was how we got Unique Leader. It was a classic way. He got the demo and he said, "I want to sign you guys."
Hell yeah.
And then so shortly after you went on, so you did the European tour, and then the next one was the Bloodletting?
Yeah.
Okay. That was with
Gorgasm, Pyemia, Spawn of Possession, Severed Savior.
Yeah. That was the one. So I think that was 27 shows. It lasted for like 7 weeks or something. So that was awesome. That was just like, wow. And of course, like the Violating tour we did in Europe, it was underground, It was kind of, it is what it is, but we had a lot of fun and people were cool, and that was it,
Where did that one start out at? Because I think I saw the first and the last show of that tour. It started in the Bay and ended in the Bay or something like that.
I think we played Well, it was either in San Luis Obispo or it was somewhere.
It was a San Luis Obispo show because that was near the ranch, the Unique Leader Ranch, and then you guys ended in Palo Alto, so it wasn't the Bay necessarily, but upper.
The Palo Alto show was funny because I actually bought tickets for that like 2 months in advance. I'm like, this is gonna sell out, dude. I need to get it. Because I had like I was like this band's so insane. They're gonna sell out. It's gonna be huge. And still didn't really grasp because I was still new to the whole underground death metal scene. I mean, pretty new to it. That it wasn't the most popular genre of music. I was like completely blown away. I was like, why is there like only like there's like there was people there, but it wasn't like. I got my tickets the day they went on sale, like months in advance. Like I was like, they're gonna sell out, man. I gotta get it.
And we've already probably mentioned it, but that was the first time you and I met in person.
Yeah, me and him and Dan Kenny, and I met Bill from Decrepit. I met everyone that night. Was like I was a little fanboy that night. I was just like completely blown away by seeing Spawn, my favorite band, in person, and then I got to see Decrepit, meet them, talk to them. I think Mike and Eric were there. Yeah, and just was like totally like starry-eyed. Like, geez, I remember before the show we got there really early, and we were eating at Subway, and all you guys came into the Subway, and I was like, oh my god, that's Dennis and Jonas, dude, from Spawn of Posession. I don't want to look at them, dude. I got like nervous, like literally like if you were to see like a humongous rocks, like a Axl Rose walked in. That was like what you guys walking in. That was like,
isn't that funny, dude? I got a Muhammad story running into him at a fucking 7-Eleven, dude, in Maryland. Just like, oh, dude. But I actually did talk to him. I was like, what's up, dude? And fucking said I was there for him, and he let us buy T-shirts out of the back of their rental Jeep. I was like, dude, I got a fucking Necro shirt before everybody else, dude. They were on their way to the venue, and so were we. Just stopping getting fucking Gatorade because we've been partying all night, the night before.
Yeah. Did you guys ever play with Spawn or with a Necrophagist ever? No. That'd be imagine if you guys and Necrophagist came out of retirement and were like, we're gonna do a tour together.
Oh, dude, that would like
that would sell out. That would be humongous.
Heck check,
I'll tell you, before I was very like, I gotta say, like nowadays I'm very disconnected. If I listen to music, I kind of go on Spotify. I mean, I don't see album covers,
Mm-hmm.
So, but back then I was very connected into the scene. I emailed, responded, blah blah blah, did all that stuff. A lot of trading with bands. And I'll tell you a fun story because this was when we had our second demo out, and I had become friendly with Richard from a band called Deranged, a Swedish kind of gore band, like old school, been around forever. So we would talk on the phone once in a while. And then they had done a tour, and he called me up and was like, yeah, I was on tour and everything. And he said, there was a band on that tour that I think you would probably like them. I didn't like them, he said, because he wasn't into the tech stuff. And he said, they're called Necrophagist. So, okay. So this must have been like 99 or something, 2000 maybe. So it's like, okay, immediately going online, checking them out. And they had the record with the drum machine out.
The onset.
So I emailed Mohammed, right? And so we did a trade, and we actually shot some emails back and forth and talked about whatever, and we'll see maybe in the future. But that sort of died out, and as it does, So, and then of course they put out the what's it called, Epitaph, that which is obviously like a really incredible record, and I know we've been compared a great deal with Necro for sure, like so.
But you guys definitely have your own distinct.
Yeah.
It's just like that kind of is I guess. People just hear shred, like, classical style shredding or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, these two bands are the same, but really sit down with it and actually pick it apart, and you'll realize they're Spawn of Possession is Spawn of Possession, and Necrophagist is Necrophagist.
Well, I think also like you guys were like the bands that kind of like innovated that, like not all bands were doing that back then. Now there's a lot of bands that do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, listen to Devouring the Prophecy and then Cryptic and tell me that that Spawn of Possession and Necro didn't have something to do with the evolution of that band, dude, because now there's solos, there's fucking tech, super tech, fucking, fast and fucking there was something that was that download right there, dude, that made that happen.
But, it's true. It was kind of like the bee's knees, like back in the day was like Spawn and Necro. It was just like, and of course Suffo and all the classics, but it was like for all those early bands, like we were just like, we loved all the bands, but we always kind of were just like Spawns up here. I'm sorry, it's just the way it was. Like,
well, when you're younger and you're playing guitar or playing music and stuff, and especially when you get into death metal and you're at a younger age, you're always trying to find the crazier thing. Like what's the like what okay we found this band, what's the this band though, and then like it's this band, then it just keeps going and going and going until until you hit Spawn or Necrophagus, basically.
And you guys like just get better with age, man. It's like when Joel told me that we were going to have you on the podcast, I got all stoked, and I was like in my car and I re-listened to Cabinet, and I was just like, God damn, like so many times, like throughout the album, I was just like, I forgot how fucking good this is, like
Yeah.
I listened to it on the way to the studio here today, so I still love that album. And I'm a generation later than these guys, like 6 years younger, but also all my friends grew up with that album and Noctambulent
and
too.
all the albums. And
Noctambulent for me was I think more of an influence at first, but over time I've been with them almost as long each. So I wanted to ask about Noctambulent. Did you write the lyrics for that album too? And that concept for that album was really influential for me as a lyricist too. The way you took a whole concept through the album from a first person perspective. And I'm working on lyrics for an album right now, and I'm going to go revisit that idea. But can you talk about coming up with that?
Yeah, it was basically one of those ideas because I used to remember we were like Jonas, like all of us were pretty heavy into King Diamond, and and still are, and listening to those old like Conspiracy and them and those classics. And he does that thing. He does that concept thing, and he does it so well. Like he's very simplistic in his way. We got to repaint the front door soon and shit like that. But it's just so graphic. You totally can see it in front of you. Mm-hmm. And I was always mighty impressed. But I also realized, okay, I can't do that because that's his signature. I have to do something different. And then I think there was also another favorite album of my Seventh Son with Iron Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
That's also a concept album, I believe. So I think I said to Jonas, maybe we should. What do you think? Like doing that? And he was like, yeah, do whatever. He's always been very like liberal like that. Like, yeah, whatever. You do your stuff. So, and the only thing was that we sort of we had to figure out the order of the songs before I started with the lyrics, because I've never written lyrics and then apply them to songs. I've always written with the song in the back of my head. Mm-hmm. That's how I like to do it. So we had that thing going, and then at the time it's kind of blurry because that album happened in our world. It happened so fast. Noctambulent, like Cabinet, we stewed on that for like 5 years with the demos, with everything. You got to try out, blah blah blah, and then we did the record. With Noctambulent, it was like from start to finish, I think was a year, which, like I said, for us, that was quick. And that album, this is kind of another thing, like each album has been written very differently. Cabinet was written in the old-fashioned way, where Jonas would bring riffs to rehearsal, and we would, listen. He would play, and I would kind of mess around with the drums, and then, oh, what about that other riff? What if we try to connect the blah blah blah, and then we go back and forth a little bit. So that's how that album more or less happened. Noctambulent, we didn't have a practice place anymore in the beginning of that. So the first two songs, Jonas sent me. He would put them in a sort of a tab.
Power
program.
tab.
Yeah, power tab, exactly. So he would send me bits and pieces like that. And I think he and I was the only ones that was imaginary who could hear the guitars and hear stuff. Because most people was like, that sounds like a Nintendo game. What is that? They didn't get, you have to listen, see beyond that. But
Yeah.
he could totally see it. I could totally see it. So we would be on the phone and talk about it. And I would maybe switch something and send it back, and he would switch and send it. And we would sort of work like that. And that was interesting because I wrote the drums in my head completely. We didn't make any drum tracks. So when we finally got a practice pad, and this was in the middle of the whole Noctambulent thing. When we finally got the practice pad, I remember we got out there and we played some old songs, and yeah, it feels good and stuff. And then me and Joe was like, should we try to play because we had 2 finished songs, and it was Lash by Lash and In My Own Greed.
Yeah.
And I'd never played the drums, like literally never. I had them in my head because I constantly at work. I worked at a storage facility, so I would constantly listen to these MIDI files. So, and we got through them in the first sitting. It was pretty spectacular. We were like shocked, like, wow, what happened? And the other guys were like, yeah, oh, some great songs, guys. Like, yeah, let's do them, you know. So those songs were, for Noctambulent, was way more theoretically put together. If you know, we didn't get a chance to practice them. Like Scorched, the last song, I think that was the last song we wrote. I think me and Jonas played it maybe 3 times, 4 times, and then it was like, well, we're off to the studio. It was basically like that. So we never got a chance to play it because, again, and it is what it is. I mean, I think the songs hold up. I think the album is cool and all that. But you know, when you're practicing, like with cabinet songs, we could play a song for a year and then sort of, well, wait a minute, what if we blah blah? They kind of evolve. But with Noctambulent, it was really like boom, boom, boom. Here we go. This is what we got, and then the click track is ready. We can't compromise. We can't mess around with this. So
does that album have some of those? Oh, I wish I could. I wish I had more time with it because I would have done it this way at this part, you know, instead of how it is. Because it's like you're saying, you guys had all that time to sculpt cabinet, and then really quickly compared to that, get in the studio for the second one, and then just stamp it into time, and then that's it. You don't have the extra 4 years to sit and be like, oh, I could have done something here.
No, but that is a very good question. I think there's also, I've sort of come to terms with that there's also a risk. Sometimes you just need to let the music go and say, okay, it is done. Fuck it. I'm not going to, work on it because because when you finish a song and you nail it in the practice place, you get that sort of, exciting feeling. It's like, whoa, we nailed this fucking great song. Now, obviously, if you keep playing that song, you might get a little tired of it. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't recorded it, subconsciously, you sort of know, all right, we can change it around. But now we're doing it. Maybe we're doing it just because we're kind of bored with a really good song. It's just that we have forgotten kind of how good it is. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that happened on Cabinet, but I'm sure it could happen. I don't know. So, and we didn't do any massive changes on Cabinet. It was more like tweaking stuff. Like I would come up with some drum thing. So yeah, those kind of things. Sure, that would have been cool. But I think the only thing that we felt with Noctambulent, because we wanted it to be, we always focused on atmosphere, but we wanted it to be a darker record. And if you listen to it, there were things that, like the bass drums doesn't have that super uber kind of clicky sound. It's more like muddy. It's more like a bass drum, like that feeling. Mm-hmm. And also the guitar sound. It's still the Triaxis. It's still like the same. It's a different amp than we used on Cabinet, but it's still the same gear. But we made it. It's a little muddy. It's a little darker. I don't know how to put words on it, but that's something me and Jonas talked about. Like, fuck, we should have kept it more Cabinet style, maybe, But then again, I mean, people seem to, learn to live with it,
Yeah, I mean, as an artist, that's how it's got to be, dude. You got to make it, and then there it is.
Yeah.
And if you have, whatever things you not necessarily regrets, just things you would have done different. It's like we constantly evolve. We're never going to be fully happy with our art, and that's.
But that album takes you on a very particular adventure, and I've gone on that adventure so many times that I do think there's a perfection to it, as maybe more of a theoretical Guitar Pro mapped out album or guitar tab, it stands as its own amazing artwork. So I really appreciate that
Thank
it
you.
did come out the way it did.
Well, that's also, I think that's attributed to the fact that we were, aside from the fact that we didn't have a place to play, we were a very like tight unit. We did 4 tours, full tours on Cabinet. So when we were done with all that, we were like totally, we were so locked in terms of the playing and the mindset. We knew exactly, and we didn't write on the tours, but me and Jonas talked many times on sort of the vision, if you want to be a little pretentious about it, but we kind of knew in what direction we wanted to go, like get a little more weird, more this, more that, So I think that when we recorded it, we very much knew what we were doing. We were more fresh on Cabinet. When Noctambulent came around, I just remember being extremely comfortable doing the drums on that, just having a good time in the studio, which up to that point, I hated to go to the studio.
So did you actually play Scorched in the studio at the recorded tempo, which is something like 310 BPM?
Yeah, but it's with Punch In. I played it with. I didn't play it in one take. For the record, no, it's not a one take song. Having a snare that tight, that hard in that tempo, fuck that. Like it's doable. I could have done it maybe if I had all the time and all the money. Maybe I could have done it. But again, the whole thing with the studio, for me, the prestige about that. Look, I totally respect musicians going in just nailing it. Man, I take my hat off to that. But for me, I have a slightly different philosophy, because if you're comfortable doing that, go ahead and do it. But for me, it's like, here we have all this fucking technology, and I hope people are not listening to it and thinking like, oh, I wonder, did Jonas play that lick in one, you know what I mean? It's like, is this a first take? I don't think like that when I listen to music. Maybe I did way back, but now I don't pay attention to that stuff because I don't think it's relevant. What's relevant is how it sounds. Then we can talk about how you did it, but then again, you have to go on stage and perform.
Yeah.
So that's where the sort of evidence comes out if you're into that stuff.
Going back to performing, you said, there was one video just to kind of, talk about the mythological Spawn of Possession stuff. There's one video out there of, I don't know, it wasn't Carlson, it was a newer guitar player, I think, but he did or might have been Bryssling, I don't know, but he did the whole song blindfolded. As you remember,
No, that was the hired guitar player for the Incurso tour.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason he was blindfolded was that he was kind of a big mouth about, I can play this shit blindfold. So on the last show, the dudes from, I think it was Exvius, came out and put a blindfold on him and was like, okay, play. And somebody was there with a camera that night. So that's how that came about. It was pretty funny.
That was funny.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy.
I just wanted to follow up about the blast beat on Scorched. Like, obviously, when I listen to that song, like, I'm not thinking about that other than as a musician myself, wondering if I can do it myself. That's kind of how you think about those questions. But obviously, I agree with your philosophy on technology and music.
I have to say, when we practiced it, like me and Jonas practiced it, we played the song. Like, we played it, but I didn't have a click track in a practice pad. So obviously, was it like that tight, like record tight? Probably not. The chances are, no. But the whole idea was that, we're going to do it live. Because that was a song we were going to change, because we always finish the shows with Church of Deviance, like a quick sort of beat in the face. So we said, we're going to play Church midway and end the show with Scorched. That's going to be awesome. And the only prestige I've ever had as a drummer is playing the hardest, fastest song last when you're the most tired. It's like a little, oh, you're so tired. No, watch this. And then you play, like a fun thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what happened there was that even before the album was released and we hadn't had any time to practice after the studio, we got an offer to do a tour with Hate Eternal.
Nice.
And the other guys in the band didn't know Scorch and half the album. they couldn't play those songs. They hadn't learned it, so we had to scramble a set really quick. So we had like Lash by Lash, Sour Flow, and one more song. Those were the ones that they knew how to play. Mm-hmm. So that was what we brought on the road, and it didn't really matter because that tour was so talking about how many people you get in the audience. I remember us playing fucking Birmingham or something in England, or Bristol or something, and it was like, dude, 5 people watching us. It was like, really? It was like, should we play? There was a couple of hardcore fans, and of course, okay, this is your night. Here you go. Buy a bunch of shirts, dude.
Please, yeah, that's awesome.
I guess you treat those as practice, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But I gotta say also about Scorched and about that stuff, and just a recording philosophy in general. And this is quite relevant to Spawn, I think, is that the producer adapted that way of, I don't know if you've seen a year and a half in the life of Metallica, those documentaries. Like when they did the Black album, they made one documentary on the studio and one on the road. Mm-hmm. They're really, really good. Like the best Metallica documentaries I've ever seen, I think. Mm. Well, anyway, they sit there in the studio and they sort of, what the producer, Bob Rock, is doing, he's looking for the magic take. So it's nothing to do with the band if they're able to play it or not. He's waiting for the right sort of, oh, there we go. That's the magic, And that's what the producer we work with, he's always worked like that as well. So he sort of takes away all the prestige. He's like, yeah, I know you can play this. That's not the point with we're gonna get it's really good. And sometimes you get on a roll and you just keep going and everything. And sometimes it's like, it's just not right. Just a little sounds too static or too this or too that, So we'll work on it till you get it like the way it should work. And so, like I said, in terms of the productions of Spawn Obsession and the sound and the atmosphere, he has been a key figure, because in my mind it was always like, well, we go in and we just fucking, you play and then you miss a beat and then you punch it in and then you keep going and then there's a song. But he was like, well, you can do better than that. That was his philosophy. You can do way better than that. Of course, it's harder and it takes more time. It costs more money, blah, blah, but you end up with something that hopefully is very special. So that's sort of been our philosophy when we got into the head of him, and he got into our head. Certainly that's sort of how we worked with Spawn on all the records, really.
I hear a lot of bands say that they need that person to kind of tell them that sucked, or like you could do better, or like for us, like going in with Zach Oren, who's done a bunch of albums now, but that was kind of like whenever I did like the hardest song first, because I was doing the bass for Cryptic Implosion, and a song, it's kind of like with you guys and the Guitar Pro and stuff like that. Like there's a song at the end that we never played, but we were, Casey put it together on tour or something, and we basically, I went in there and I'm like, well, I'm gonna do the hardest one first, and the biggest kick in the pants was he looked at me and he goes, do you even know what you're doing right now? He looked at me and I was like, no, I don't. So he was like, you can do better. Like, we'll do this change. He was like helping me out through it, because I had never, obviously it was my first like real studio experience, and it was a song we hadn't played. So it was like two things that that were kind of hitting me at the same time. I was nervous and a lot of stuff, but it's something, if you especially, I mean, even with like vocals and stuff, like I'm sure after a certain amount of time you're like, I think that was good. I can't even tell if it's good anymore. I don't even know if it's good anymore, and you need someone to go like, no, you need to do it again, or definitely. It's always good. Yeah,
you're totally right. And we were fortunate, like I said before, it was pure coincidence that we ended up in this studio, because I know several metal studios, obviously I know a lot of bands have been, they're more like, yeah, okay guys, here's the rec button and I'm going to go and have a coffee, have fun. It's more like that attitude. It's up to the band. And if you're lucky, someone in the band will have the discipline. And I can tell you with Spawn Obsession, Jonas, in terms of Cabinet and Noctambulent, Jonas Bryssling is the only one who's had that discipline himself. In other words, he can produce himself. He really can, and he has done that many times. But he prefers still to have someone because you want to shut your brain off. You just want to go and have someone tell you, like, and in the beginning, of course, it was painful. Someone telling you, like, that's what do you know, man? You played yourself, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it's not my job. It's your job. And I'm not going to let you get out of the studio until you nail it. And yeah, and I remember he would tell me stuff like, when I would warm up, he would say, you nailed that blast beat perfectly. And when you were warming up, do it now. Like stuff like that. But again, I mean, he was tough, but he was also encouraging and all that stuff. But it made me remember on speaking about Noctambulent and the song Scorched, I actually cheated a little bit, because when we started that song, I recorded midway, and I started up and gave it a couple of shots to get it going, because it's very fast. It's just like, I'm not going to be silly about it. It's a fast song. And then behind me was a window. And in the window was a bunch of drumsticks that other drummers had left and stuff. It was just like a whole collection. And it was I found like a drumstick. It was like extremely small, and it weighed absolutely nothing. I was like, what is this? Is this a toy? I don't know what this is. But I actually used that. It kind of made it a little slightly easier. I had to hit harder to get the note to hit to get the strength,
velocity.
But it was slightly easier to play. So that's how I sort of got through it.
That's a great anecdote. Yeah.
I just remember that now. I had this little toy stick or something, but I used my fingers pretty much when I play anyway, but it was just a little easier to maneuver with it. But I felt afterwards, I was like, man, I got to get those. But then I felt, for the more heavier parts, like when you slow down and you want to do the toms, it wouldn't really work. You need real sticks.
Yeah. Well, one more thing on the drumming on that album is we're talking a lot about that song, but that's kind of not what the rest of the album is all about. And a lot of that album, the drumming is a lot more maybe atmospheric, and you're doing a lot of amazing stuff over like clean guitar parts. And there's just so many dynamics and variation in the drumming in general on that album.
Thank you. And actually we can talk a little bit about that, because when we were going in, I thought that this was we're going to take up the speed. In my mind, it was like, well, we're fast. And then Jonas said, no, you can't go, like, because of all that touring on Cabin, I had obviously elevated my chops. And he said, no, the riffs for this album are so sick at times. We got to keep the tempos down. So I remember thinking, like, man, But then I thought about one of my like all-time favorite death metal albums, Pierce from Within, with Suffocation. It's like a masterpiece. I even got the tattoo. So, and that album, like, I fucking love Mike Smith to death, but that album, that's not a fast record. I mean, the blast speed on that is like, it's not like nothing like anyone else, but they made that work. It brought a groove to Suffocation that was like unheard of. And I think the drummer's name is Doug Bond.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's almost like you can either look at like, oh man, he's struggling with the blast and he's struggling with the pedals, but I choose to not look at, I look at like, this is perfect for these riffs. And so that was my mindset going into Noctambulent. I thought, oh, okay, wait, well, I'll play like that. I don't have to go faster. And besides, if you take down your normal speed, you'll play even better, And like I said before, I felt very comfortable recording that. The thing about Scorched was that Jonas said, because we talked about it, and he said, this song is, you can go how fast you want with Scorched. You can go, I don't care. I can play any speed. Just go nuts, because those riffs will work. The faster you go, the better it will be.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh, you're giving me a challenge. And then, of course, it became very fast.
I used to not think it was even physically possible. It was one of those moments like, that's impossible. And now that I'm a drummer 10 years later, I'm like, I've played through it a couple times. I can see how it's possible, but it's still at the upper limit of playability, like physically.
I just gotta say, like, a dream scenario was that me and Jonas wanted to play it on the tour we did with Hate Eternal, and like a dream scenario would have been like if we performed it live and I played it the way it should be played, and somebody videotaped it, put it on YouTube. So like, there you go. But it happened with Church of Deviance, so it's out there. But
yeah. Have you seen the video of Kevin Hedrich, who's the German guitarist who played Scorched on guitar at like faster than it was recorded? He like sped it up a certain amount. Oh, it's insane. That guy is insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he played it like
that's funny.
30% faster or something like that, or 40% faster or something like that.
Yeah, he's done other songs. Like he's played a lot of Necrophagist songs at like 125% or something. He's also toured with Defeated Sanity as a touring member, so he's just like a really sick guitarist. But yeah, you should check him out. But yeah, man, it was so great to nerd out about all that material that's just been super influential to an entire generation of musicians. One more thing is like we've talked about some of the rhythm and stuff, but just the guitar theory and like it's like classical, neoclassical, but not like neoclassical in the way that Obscura or those bands are, but it's like modern classical that a lot of it's really on the brink of like progressive music, I would say.
Well, that's also because remember I mentioned that we had like a more Swedish sounding death metal band before, had way more Baroque kind of a little bit more like necro, those kind of things, which we were like totally into at the time. But I think Jonas, he's always like Bach has always been the main guy, but he also started checking out other, like you said, more modern and different kind of stuff. I remember we were sitting and listening to Stravinsky and these crazy Shostakovich, and I mean these crazy composers who they sort of broke the mold on that, because at the end of the day, like Baroque music is kind of air candy in a way. It's very sweet. It's super nice. I love it, but it's kind of when you listen to other stuff, because there's so much out there. You find stuff, and I think Jonas was very receptive to that, and he understood it. That's an important part too. He really got what they were doing. And the thing with we were talking earlier about, you said it was like Spawn and Necron, the melodies and the solos and stuff. Very early on, Jonas had this idea of, what if you play a song and you have like the intro and then the verse and the chorus and so on. You do the traditional, but then somewhere along the line, you have this huge melodic part, this sort of freestanding, but it connects with the rest of the song. We call it, and when I translate, it sounds really silly, but we call it cookies. Like, we need a cookie in this song. I kid you not. It's really that. It's like, we need a cookie. And so basically what you could do is you could have like a separate thing that was just freestanding, and then put it into a song and see how it would work, and maybe tweak it a little bit to make it all sort of entwined and get it working really good. And I think that's what separated Spawn a little bit, that you would get like a little surprise somewhere in the middle, before or after the solo. That was that was very early. Yeah. And those obviously, they evolved with the albums too. Jonas goes nuts with those. We even talked about, maybe we should write a song without one. I don't know how, you know. We need them, you know.
Yeah. What a great concept. I've never heard it described as a cookie, but like I immediately thought of a bunch of songs that already have those, and entire bands that base their. I think that is a pretty ubiquitous idea.
Like a Opeth thing.
Yeah.
Right. To have they got a bunch of cookies in their stuff.
I would say that too.
Definitely.
Or like Cynic would have those at like the end of the album.
I'm so going to start finding cookies. I'm going to be looking for cookies in all the songs that I listen to now, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like what flavors they are too. Like, oh, dude, this is kind of chocolate chip type. You know, oatmeal raisin at the end.
Yeah.
You know, is Jonas Bryssling doing any form of music or anything anymore, or is it just kind of you guys just kind of stepped away?
No, he is. I haven't spoken to him in a while, and he actually wrote me like 3 days ago. I haven't spoken to him since winter, because we don't live in the same town. But I also know he still writes. He's a writing machine, and he writes all kinds of shit. Like we usually, what he wrote me about was like, we're going to hook up this summer because his dad lives here, so he was coming down to visit his dad. And I said, yeah, for sure, we should meet up. We always, drink a bunch of beers, and he usually, like the last time, he would play me a bunch of real weird stuff like that he has done. And we constantly talk about doing something like he's been working on something that I said I'll be happy to do vocals and maybe bass on, because I've been playing quite a lot of bass. So, but then we haven't spoken about it, so I'm not sure where we're at with all that stuff. But
would it be a Spawn of Possession thing, or would it just be a side project kind of thing?
No, this is really down-tuned, really like I don't know really what to say about it. It's I think it's very old school, because there's a side to it. It's interesting, like when you talk about when we're talking about Spawn Obsession, one would assume, like I did with bands, like that the only thing we listen to are tech death bands. But that's not the case at all. I mean, Jonas, he has a wide range of all kinds of different bands he listens to, and so do I. So inspiration comes from all over the place, I guess. And then, of course, like classical music and movie scores and, all kinds of crazy shit out there. But we'll see what happens. Yeah, I like I said, I was hoping to see him before I did this podcast, because I could have given you something on it, but I don't want to speculate on it. I need to talk to him first.
Well, it's definitely good that definitely made me very happy to know that you guys are at least still like musicians. You didn't put it down and walk away. You guys are still working on stuff, and still, there's a possibility of connecting in the future. That's awesome. Like, I'm sure everyone will be stoked to hear that possibility. That's what everyone wants. We want you guys just to get together and make music, whether it's Spawn or something. Just, you guys are incredible. So definitely crossing my fingers for that.
Cool.
How often do you sit down on the kit right now, Dennis?
Oh man, I can honestly say I haven't touched drums in many years.
Really?
No, I mean, I have kids and I live in an apartment, so that's where the bass came in. I need something. I'm going crazy. I need something, because I watch drummers on YouTube all the time. Yeah. I love watching great musicians. I watch guitar play. I watch all that shit, But I connected with the bass, obviously, for it has the rhythmic thing, and I started figuring out, like, that was also another thing that I never really understood, like how a real good bass line is constructed, and how it elevates the song, and how it makes, like, cheesy pop songs work, because a lot of the bass, what the bass is doing, when you sort of realize that, just how important a bass is and stuff. But I'm itching to play drums. I'll be very honest about that. I actually, last night I was hanging out with Henrik, who played drums on Incurso. We haven't seen each other for the whole Corona bit. So he came down to visit me, and so we were just having a night of beers and music last night. It was awesome.
Hell yeah!
And he has a daughter now, and he hasn't been playing, but he was like the same way. Like, dude, I got to get back on the saddle. He just wants to play drums again too. I miss the drums a lot, more and more. And now, like, my kids are growing up, I'm thinking I gotta have an e-kit at home.
Yeah.
So they can try that out. They can try the guitar, whatever, the keyboards, the shit, and hopefully they'll start playing.
Yeah, continue.
To me, I don't really miss the whole. I miss the band thing. I love to sort of jam and practice and stuff and play with the guys. I miss that, but the whole therapy of just playing an instrument, like, I can stand down here in my man cave and play my bass for an hour, just jamming on the bass. That's it. Like, not practicing, really, just playing along to records and having fun with it. That's just pure therapy for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's it's like meditative, because you're not thinking about anything else except for being in that moment. So it's like forced meditation almost.
Yeah, totally. And so,
going from so we were at Noctambulent. So what was the writing? Because you said so, and this is something I didn't even know. So you had a different drummer on Incurso. It wasn't you doing drums.
No.
Okay.
So what happened was,
go for it.
So we're doing the Noctambulent, and we get on the we do the tour, and it was a really bad tour. And that's not attributed to Hate Eternal. Fucking awesome band. Fucking Eric, super cool. The guys he had in the band, I don't think any of them are playing with Hate Eternal anymore, but they were super cool. Everything was great. But it was extremely poorly promoted. Like, everyone just lost money. One of the bands fucking left the tour. And I just remember everyone's just bummed. We didn't get beers. We didn't get money. I was like, what, really? And Nick Barker, if you know, the drummer from Demu and a bunch of bands. I guess he played with Cradle of Filth also.
Yep.
He was the tour manager on that. And he was also like a really cool guy, but he was also like, man, his tour is like, nobody's coming to the shows. Nobody's know we're coming to town. What the fuck? So when we got home from that tour, we were just really bummed. It was like, and I started doubting myself, my drumming, like, nah, fuck this. I don't want to do this life anymore. I don't care. Going from being totally into it, like totally talking to all the band, going to shows, hooking up, trading, blah, blah, blah. I was like, nah, I'm going to do something else, whatever. And then in the middle of that, me and Jonas Bryssling had a bad falling out. Like, fuck, it was bad. So he moved to another city, and we didn't speak for 5 years or something. And it was one of those things, like, if we're going to end the band, it should be on a good note, you know? I mean, considering everything that's all we've been through together with the tours and the buses and all that stuff.
Since high school and shit.
Yeah, that was just a bad situation. So that was basically it for Noctambulent. That was what happened. And it was, I mean, there's tons of stuff that happened on the tour. The merchandise didn't arrive. We didn't have anything to sell. When we went on tour, we had nothing.
Fuck.
And we weren't getting paid for the shows. So that was like, okay, wait a minute. This is our second album. We did 4 tours, 2 of them with Cannibal Corpse on the first one where we made money. And now we're out here and we're not making anything. And then finally, like way into the tour, the boxes arrived. It's like, yay. We get these Church of Deviance hoodies and it says Church of Defiance on the back. I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, there was nothing worked. Everything just fell apart. And like 3 buses. We were up in the fucking Italian Alps driving the bus. All of a sudden the bus stops and the driver comes like, hey, bus doesn't work. So you take a backpack and start walking. And we're like, what? In the middle of the fucking Alps? So we get out and there's a bike race and all these bikes come. It was just like, are you kidding me? It was just, we didn't get food at the places and no showers. It was just really bad. Yeah. And that's one, it was so demoralizing, you know what I mean? So, you know how it is, like, you just finished a record, you want to show this, you want to present it, and it's like 2 people with their backs, they're at the bar drinking beer. Oh, there's a band, who cares, you know? So that was a bummer, yeah. But I just want to be clear, had nothing to do with the package in itself. It was, and because we toured with a company called Metallica, it was huge in Europe. They did all the big ones.
Hearing that name. Yep.
Yeah, they did these festivals package that we went on with Cannibal and Hypocrisy and Cataclysm, like all these fucking bands. It was awesome. And when we were doing this tour, there was someone connected to Metallica who was going to start up his own company. That was the thing. And so we got on that roster. And obviously he didn't do his fucking homework or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, that's so that crazy, was dude. That's fucking wild. I would just feel like fucking trapped, dude. you're trapped.
Oh yeah. And it was bad. And what the band that left, it became a thing. Like Nick was pissed off. It's like, what? You can't leave. What the fuck are you doing? And they were like, no, fuck this. This is just a loser's. Well, yeah, because everybody didn't get a bunk. The bus was for 3 bands, and we were 4 bands. So it was like, okay, you have to sit and sleep every other night, sit up in like a chair. And then the other, it was like you have to switch that every night. There was stuff like that going on.
Crazy.
So it was bad.
I definitely know that demoralizing feeling you're talking about when you've have the album out and you're gonna go do a tour or something like that. And I remember even with Bloodletting, it was like that a few times, like where we started off big. We started off in LA and all these big shows that were like sold out, and like even with, I remember we played a show in LA that had Emperor down the street and we still sold out. So it was like, we're like, damn, this is going to be insane. Like we're like all looking forward to it. Then we hit like the middle of the country and it's like, all right, 10 people.
Or was it that we crossed with Origin and there's like 6 people there?
Yeah. And like St. Louis or something.
Played with, it was like a one-off where Origin was coming through. They headlined our package and it was a killer fucking lineup, dude.
To be fair, that night,
people.
Wasn't there like a tornado or something that night?
Oh yeah, I think there was like some tornado.
I think Central Illinois Metal Fest was also happening like very close. So like everybody was already over there. It was kind of like our tour definitely shouldn't have gotten that close to that fest.
All the props to Joe and stuff with Gathering of the Sick, but there's we went out to do this little mini tour to end up at this festival in New Mexico called Gathering of the Sick that my buddy puts on. And we were just like thinking like, dude, it's going to be like humongous. Like it's going to be like so many people. I remember there was like 40 people, 30 people, like this big festival that we're going to go play this. It's like we had more people at the shows before, like it was, I know that feeling though that you're talking about though. It's, you start reflecting and going like, damn, why am I even doing this? Like, there's not even anyone like that many people showing up. But, there was cool things with Decrepit when I was in Decrepit that we would play Oklahoma and there'd be 10 people, play at the same place again, there'd be 20. And then one time we showed up there and there was 300, So it was like, that was like probably one of the more accomplishing things from going from the demoralizing no people at the show and then actually seeing it work, like hitting the tour circuit and actually seeing people, the word get spread. And then that was like kind of saving grace with the demoralizing like small shows, it was actually seeing the work that you put in and seeing it actually pay off, at places that you've never, middle of the country places you would never go to on your own, but people are building a fan base there was something awesome. That actually helps pick me up a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think about it sometimes, and it shouldn't really matter. It's like you're on tour, you're supposed to like play shows, and you shouldn't really care. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like you shouldn't. It shouldn't bother you if there's like 10 people or 500, whatever. But we're only human. It does, it affects. But then again, we play,
and you can't even sell them T-shirts because your shit's not there yet.
No, and then you go like try to tell yourself like, well, it's not about the money. Then you come home to a fucking stack of bills, and it's like, oh fuck, I need to pay all that shit. It's like,
there's a point with touring with Odious and stuff where we were dumpster diving for like food and shit. Like we were like, we'd go on our guitar player David like knew like where the companies were that made certain food items, and we just go and they throw away so many perfectly fine items because they're not up to standard or whatever of what they need to release. So they'll go to the bakery and go rummage through, and they'd have like all these humongous loaves of bread and like all this awesome bread, and we'd go to like sometimes actually we went to a Budweiser once and got a bunch of like half-filled like Budweisers and like
half-filled, the ones that just didn't get fully filled on the
it's like still fine, everything was fine, but just that struggle, that was it was real. That was definitely like we were in it, we were doing it. There was no other thing we wanted to do, and that's that's something I would never do now. Like that kind of struggle, and once you grow up a little bit, you're like, damn, we really went hard with that, man. That was we really did it for the love of the music,
Oh yeah, totally. That's what it's all about.
Definitely. definitely.
Yeah.
So Incurso, so you said that drummer. So basically, was the writing process the same with? So you and Jonas had a falling out, and then how did that get mended and get back together to make Incurso?
What happened was simply that after Spawn, I went away on and I did, and this is really bizarre. I did a record with Nick, where I play guitars and I do vocals, and Nick plays bass, and then Henrik. Found Henrik through Rob and Flatpig, actually. He plays the drum. He had been in a bunch of bands, and he played the drums. And then we found Germ Martin, who had played on the last Visceral Bleeding album. So he came in, did the solos and stuff. We record this whole album, like, and pretty much mix it and everything. And then it just, like, I don't know what happened. It's not been released. The album cover's there. The deal is signed. And we just, I don't know. So we're struggling with, like, we should put this out. That album is more than 10 years old, and it's ready. And it's like a totally brutal thing. It's not Spawn or anything, but it's very, very brutal.
What's the name of the project?
Begotten.
Okay.
Begotten.
Yeah.
You're saying there's like a hidden, almost Spawn of Possession album just never came out. That's insane. I know it's not actually Spawn of Possession, but
no, that's problematic because whatever I ever do, people are going to compare it to Spawn, which is
okay.
I mean, I get that, but it's unfair because Jonas is the real mind behind Spawn. He is the genius in Spawn Obsession. So, but Jonas, I've heard the album, and to my surprise, he was really like giving me a lot of props for it. He was like, man, it's awesome. Release, what the fuck? It's great, you know. It's very brutal. It's just like a lot of blast beats, and it's very lively recorded, one take kind of thing to get a certain like old school Imperial Doom kind of vibe, hard hitting, fucking it's a brutal album, and I'd love to record it, and Rob's gonna mix it. It's just a matter of time to sit down and do it, but hopefully we actually signed with Willow Tip, I think they're called.
Oh shit!
Oh wow!
Yeah.
But it was signed like 10 years ago. I don't even know if the deal is still on. I don't know. We got to email those guys. But yeah. But so I befriended Henrik. We became very close friends, and we did Begotten, and that was that. And somewhere in this mix, I get an email from Jonas Bryssling, and he basically goes, "Hey dude, fucking a lot of shit went down. I'm so beyond that now. I don't care. So I don't know how you feel, but," and it was like two lines in the email about that, and then it was just like this chunk about this album he had worked on. I was like, "Yeah, I'm working on it. I love this whole thing." So I was so super happy that he wrote me, because I didn't like that. I mean, we've known each other since we were teenagers. It's kind of shitty when that happens. And he was the bigger guy, so he was like, "Yeah, what's up?" So I said, "Yeah, send me some stuff. I want to hear it," because I knew he records and stuff. And he sent me a bunch of stuff, and I was like, "Fucking hell, we got to do this, man."
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So that's basically how it happened. And then he had another drummer at the time, and I said, "Cool," because Jonas had gone with Spawn to Australia and played shows, and had a completely different lineup. Because when we split up, Nick and Jonas Carlson, they left. They were like done. They were like, "Oh, we're done." So they're out of the picture. So he got a bunch of other. Erlen, I think, played bass, who played on Incurso. He was on that tour, I think. And then there was another guy, Richard, who played at the time. I think he was in a band called Shining, like a Swedish black metal.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they went to Australia and they did a bunch of things, and then he said, "I got the lineup complete. I want you to do the vocals," and that was that.
So that's when Chalky was doing those vocal demos for a while.
Well, I didn't hear that. What?
Oh, Matthew Chalk, the ex-Psychroptic singer, was singing with Spawn of Possession during that era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened there. All I know was that Jonas wrote me and asked if I wanted to do the vocals. That was basically, I felt I'm not touching whatever is going on. I wouldn't want to step on anybody's toes or anything like that. But as far as I know, that stuff was sorted out. Jonas was like, no, I want you to do the vocals. That's it. Whatever happened, why he didn't go on and do the record, I don't know. I never got into that stuff. So, yeah. So, and I was like, cool, let's do it.
And Incurso is as popular as the other two Spawn of Possession albums. I hang out with a lot of musicians who hold that in the same exact regard. And so it's cool that you were a part of that album too. And that one is a shredder for sure. And Christian Wesner on guitar is an incredible part of it. And it's definitely got a different sound, but it's still got that core Spawn of Possession vibe to it.
Yeah, and like I said, like all the Spawn of Possession albums are written differently. So like Cabinet was more like getting together and like most people do. And the second one was way more theoretical, and it was more like on the computer and blah, blah, blah. And Incurso was Jonas with his guitar. That was Incurso. Like he wrote that fucking album from start to finish with some help from Erlen, he told me. And then he sent me, this is kind of funny because we had it's a good thing when we patched it up and we started talking again, it was like no time had gone by. You know what I mean? It was like we know each other so well. So he's like started talking immediately. And he said, yeah, I want your input on stuff. And he sent me basically the whole Incurso album. And it's like, let me know about changes and stuff. I was like, what the fuck? This is an hour of the most extreme shit I've ever heard. And you want me to go like I can't do that. I had some suggestions for the first song, the Where Angels Go, like what if we do a little different opening or something? And then I was like, you know what? It's perfect. Let's just leave it alone. It's great.
Sick.
And so that was and then I think when the whole album was going to be sort of be before studio, Richard had said to Jonas, like, I want to practice this. I want to play with you and like work on it. And Jonas had I think he had 2 kids at the time and at least one. And he was like, you have to work this out and then come to the studio and play it. And I don't know how far they got in those conversations, but he asked me one time on the phone, like, do you know anyone? I was like, yeah, I know Henrik. He could definitely pull this off. And it's like, well, then ask him like if he can do it. So, and I think it was harmonious when he talked to the other drummer. I think that was okay. You know, he explained like, no, it's not going to work out. And so that was basically it. So Henrik got the gig. And also, I don't know if you know this, but all the drums that I recorded for Spawn, I've never had a guitar player with me. I've never had like a 10 track with guitars. I've always recorded the drums silently.
Wow.
So I just had the click track in my headphones. I never use. No.
Wow.
It's I realized it's a stress factor. For me it is. The only thing you could argue, like the way I see it, is that like, well, I need it for the feeling. And I get that. I mean, I totally get that. You know what? I know these songs so well because that's my job as a drummer. I got to, especially when you're playing this kind of stuff, you need to know every little fucking thing. You know, you got to know exactly where you are. So when both Cabinet, I was alone in the studio with the producer, and on Noctambulent, same thing. And on Incurso, I encouraged Henrik to do the same. So he did. So it was Henrik and myself and the producer. There was no like temp tracks or anything. It was the MIDI file.
That's a rare thing, dude. I've never actually heard
that either.
this.
Yeah. It's so cool.
In death metal.
No, but think about it. It's also like when we did the demos, I remember everybody was sitting and yawning when I was doing the drums. Everybody's just bored. It was just like, and I was like, you don't need to be here. You know what I mean? It's like, you can go do your thing. It's okay. I got this. Now, of course, if it depends on the dynamics of a band, obviously. I mean, if a guitar player has a lot of input on the drummer, the guitar player would want to be there to sort of, but as much as I trust Jonas with the guitars, he always trusted me with the drums. He knew, like, Dennis will deliver the drums. I know it will be just the way.
So are you hearing the guitars in your head while you're playing,
Yeah.
or are you literally just going by feel?
No, I hear the riffs. I don't count.
Yeah.
I have all the songs. And the problem with that is that I hum. So he would scream at me, "Stop fucking humming. Your voice is going on the track."
That's funny.
And there's actually, my voice is actually on several songs, but
Wow.
he sort of fucked that up. He took it out in the mix.
I'd love to hear that, dude. Like an isolated track, dude.
Incredibly embarrassing. Because I mix melodies and vocals, and I mix all the stuff that sort of sticks out. So it would be like like that. I would sit like that. I actually have it on tape somewhere. Like I record some
Dude,
stuff.
that's amazing, dude. I mean, we would giggle at it, but it's like still a fascinating thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like, I wanted to eliminate all the distractions. I just want to be there in my own space and sort of do my thing. I just felt more comfortable doing that.
That's super cool, dude. And like I said, I've just never heard. I mean, it works. However, it works for you. That's the way you got to do it, you know. So it's just, it's interesting. I've never heard anybody else track like that as a drummer in death metal. I don't even know outside of death metal, you know. But
yeah, that's cool.
But if you think about it, of course, I don't have the same reference, but in terms of the guitar, like on Incurso, Jonas, you know, he barricaded himself with a dude in one of the studios, because they have several studios, and they took that studio, locked the door, and there was just the two of them. I mean, I wasn't there, the producer wasn't there. It was just Jonas and this dude, and he would wreck and play and stop or whatever, you know, and I never thought about it. I was like, yeah, that's the way you should do it. And I wouldn't want to be there because it's such a, you know, it's a hard process. And I know for Incurso, man, Jonas, I mean, Jonas recorded, I'm pretty sure, all the guitars on Noctambulent. And I know he recorded all guitars on Incurso. That's a lot of guitars.
Yeah.
That's a lot of harmonies to learn. And sometimes he wouldn't even know where he was in a song. He told me it was all a blur, and he was looking at the tabs and the note sheets and, oh man, what am I doing here? Like, it's really hard, you know? He would, I think he said they slept 5 hours and then they recorded nonstop. And they had like a 50-minute break for lunch, and then they just recorded to get it done in time. And talking trivia, when I did the Begotten band, I needed an amp. So I called my buddy Rob again. And his friend had gotten the Triaxis that we used on Cabinet. So I bought that. So I had that. So when we did Incurso, we used the original Triaxis that was on Cabinet.
Do you still have that?
No, I had to sell it. I was
I was gonna buy it off you. It'd just be a little memorabilia.
Yeah, it still sounded killer, man. It worked. But Incurso, like the drums and all that stuff, that was brutal. That was a brutal. I was like, Henrik was in pain on that one. Because another thing, all of us, I think, and when I say all of us, because Erlen was in Norway and Chris was in Germany. So those guys were doing their thing, and we trusted them like blindly. It was like, they're going to nail it. There's like no discussion. So it was me and Jonas and Henrik over here. And what we didn't take under consideration was that we had an hour of music. And we had done 2 albums that were around 35, 40 minutes, 40-something minutes. Now, if you add 15, 20 minutes to a record, it sounds like nothing. Like, well, what are you talking about? It's nothing. It's nothing. But when you're in the studio and you're playing that type of shit and you add like 10 minutes to that, that's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, you have to take every track into consideration. Like, man, we underestimated that the album was so long. We didn't really, so we worked overtime. Like with the drums, we would start at 8 o'clock in the morning, play to 6, take a 3-hour break, come back and play to like 2 or 3 in the morning. And Henrik would be like all swollen. His ears were like cauliflower, like wrestler's ears, because he had the cans on. It was brutal. Everybody was just in pain on that one. And of course, I can't shut my big fat fucking mouth. So I would constantly throw shit at Henrik, like, hey, what about doing this? What about doing that? You know, throwing stuff. Well, what if you accentuate that splash, blah, blah. And he was like, okay. And the producer was like, okay, well, hold on. Okay, do it. It was like that. It was really, really intense, but it was kind of fun too.
Definitely. Did you guys tour Incurso?
We did that tour with Obscura.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, we did Obscura, Exhibius, and Gorod.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really that was just a really nice trip. Everything was set up beautifully. We had a great tour manager, this guy Martin, who he was awesome. Everything was just like set up beautifully. And we had every night we had a great attendance, and a lot of people came out. And actually, it was the first time that we saw the fruits of our labor in terms of, like, we hadn't met people on tour that was talking about, because when we did Incurso, there was no people coming out. We only did one tour with the Hate Eternal. So when we did this, people would come up, and it was the first time when we played. I remember we played in London, and I was standing there with Mike. I came out with the microphone, and we started with Swarm of the Formless, and I looked out on the crowd, and I fucking see 3 dudes crying. I've never seen it. I was like, are you crying? It's like the tears ran, and they were smiling, and the tears came, and this was like the first song. I was like, really? And it happens. Especially we finished, I think we finished with Lash by Lash. And that's really when I don't know how many dudes I saw crying on that tour. And that's kind of like, okay, so maybe the stuff we've written, maybe it connected with some people, because what you guys have told me here tonight is amazing. Like how much it meant and all that stuff. It's amazing. I'm super thankful that you tell me, because we haven't really been, we're fanboys too. I mean, we never talked in the terms of, oh, let's make Spawn a special thing, or a band that people will take, draw inspiration from. Never. It was like, we're doing our own thing. And every time in the studio, especially with Incurso, it was like, will people even buy this? Will they get it? This is just crazy. And then, of course, like, people do get it, and it's a shock every time. Because why would they listen to us? You know that feeling? It's kind of weird.
It never ate. I mean, it never got stale for us, dude. It was always constantly in rotation. Yeah, dude. And it was, I talk about it in terms of like upgrading software and shit like that. Like, that was one of the bands for me. It's like that got my brain to really know how to focus on tech death, wow. Cause dude. I mean, you have to really sit with it. You can't just, I mean, you could, nonchalantly listen to Spawn of Possession too. But if you really want to try and break it open, you got to be ready to fucking, suss it out, get it all fucking, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to listen to every instrument all the way through. Focus on one instrument.
And it's just sick riff after sick riff after sick riff.
Mm-hmm.
They just keep fucking going.
I can tell you that is old school, and it also connects with the fact that the third album, that Incurso, I think came out the way it did, because like music in general, I think, and just like, if you take popular music or whatever, you have that hook, that great riff, and the rest is kind of but I don't care about the rest. But it works because that one riff is great. And there's bands in metal that do that too. And that was something very early on that Jonas and I talked about, was like, no, every riff is going to count. Like every riff is going to have like a fucking purpose. And when it comes to Incurso, it was the same mentality, because we always said way back, the moment we feel we're not into pushing it anymore, we're not going to pretend it's Spawn anymore. That's like, we're just going to bury the band. So when he wrote me like saying, oh, I worked on this third album, it would be cool to go out on a trilogy and stuff like that, he sort of assured me that, listen, it's going to hold, it's going to be this, it's taking a new step or something, you know, not saying it like arrogantly like that, but just, I know where he was coming from. And when I heard it, I was like, yes, we never wanted to be the band. And I'm not slamming anyone. I mean, people should do whatever they want, but it's kind of common that if you think about it, like bands, and this actually, I noticed it's kind of the same with movies, is that like, it's usually like the first 2, maybe 3 records that are like the groundbreaking, the kind of like, whoa. And then here comes we're going back to the roots. We're doing this, we're doing that. And it's sort of like, well, you sort of lose the hunger in the music. You know what I mean? But we kind of knew we had a third one in us even before we parted ways. And then obviously Jonas took care of business with that. Because he said, like, the moment we were like, well, maybe we should take it easy on the next one. Well, then we're not going to do a next one. It's just not. We can't do it with a clean conscience and call it Spawn Obsession. Spawn Obsession represents something, and that total ferocity, that hunger of just pushing and you know, breaking new. When I say break new ground, it's not breaking new grounds for other people, breaking new grounds for ourselves, and hopefully people would connect with that, you know, and. Obviously people have, which is the most awesome thing ever.
I was going to say, I'm glad that you were behind the kit in Palo Alto, because I was probably crying back then.
That could have been a possibility.
Yeah, dude, I've cried at shows for sure. I have.
Yeah.
Like, I've been so fucking, like, of course. I mean, you listen to something, you really get into it, and then you go up and you see, and you have a good sound, and they're fucking doing it. Of course, you get totally emotional. Like, so I get that. I just never ever expected people to cry to our music, because we're just this little band from this little town, Kalmar. Who cares? Kind of that kind of attitude. But yeah.
I still can't think of another band that sounds like it. That's probably why it's a very original thing. So dudes can really connect with it as its own thing. Like, that's where I get my Spawn of Possession vibe, is only from Spawn of Possession, you know?
You know, it's interesting too. And you might find this hard to believe, but with Spawn Obsession, and this is a thing that I started when we were doing this podcast and stuff, I reflected on that. Me and Jonas, as far as I can remember, have never talked about the tech stuff in Spawn, ever. What we have talked about is the arrangements, and to make the song work and make the song sort of special. The tech stuff has just come out of practice and come out of exploring new ways, and this is really uncomfortable. Oh yeah, I should work on this, blah, blah, blah. Those kind of elements. It's always been about writing great songs. And sometimes I'll get something sent my way and it's like, hey, check this band out, it's amazing. And they're like beyond me. They're so fucking crazy technical. It's ridiculous, but there's no song there. There's no substance to it. It's like, it's okay, it works for you guys, but I can't get into it. I don't know what it is. And you know, that's a subjective feeling, obviously, but I'm glad we had that mindset from the very start of Cabinet. We knew, like, song comes first. It really does. And how we put things together and how we tweak it, and the beginning and the end connects, even if it's totally different riffs. There's something there that binds it and all that stuff. And maybe that's one of the keys to Spawn Obsession, like why it is what it is. I don't know. It's hard
Yeah,
to
you
know.
you weren't doing it to be technical. You were just putting together songs, and that's how
Never.
they came out. Yeah.
Dude, never. And I've had this discussion. People, oh, you showing off. I mean, I heard it all, like totally. But in reality, it's no. And Jonas and Jonas, those guys, they were. Here you have two guys unemployed, living at their parents' house, fucking with their guitars like that all day long. Because and why do you do that? Because it's fun. It's not because, hey, I'm going to go out and show fucking. No, it's because it's fun to play stuff like that. It's fun, especially in a band. It's like the most fucking. It's the greatest feeling when you play something really tech and you lock it in, and it's like you end and you look at each other and you start laughing. It's like, whoa, we nailed it. This is amazing. You guys know what I mean? It's amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah,
We've mentioned it on the podcast. It's a different thing. The
Mm-hmm.
energy in the room becomes like one. You know, it's not, and everybody knows they caught the wave, and we're all riding it together, dude. That's the fucking what you're
especially if you had a bunch of tries. It's like, oh man, I'm not nailing that, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then it's same thing when I see I go online, I watch like guys like Mike Stern band with fucking Dave Weckl and these cats, and they're just going off like totally in the groove, and I don't get half of what they're doing. It's like so overly tech, it's ridiculous. Like what's going on? What are they doing? But still, I can totally appreciate the feeling that they're trying to achieve with that stuff, not overshadowing the music, because again, the music is number one. It has to be a certain way. It just has to be the right stuff. But once you figure out your own formula, fucking go nuts with it. That's the fun of it, man.
Yeah.
It really is. And if you're not in that stuff, and I think some people, I've actually met a lot of people that they only see Spawn for the technical side, and it's just like, oh, you guys are tech, and it's okay, man. If that's what works for you, cool. But it's more it's a bit more elevating when someone goes, man, that part is like gives me the goosebumps. It's just the way you play it, blah blah blah. Yeah. And another thing along that, which I realized pretty late, and I think a lot of musicians go through life and not realizing, is something I talked with the producer a lot, was that when I listen to like guitar players or drummers or bass players or whatever, I've come to realize that they're playing, but man, if you have your own character, if you have your own sound going, I mean, when people say like there's only one Dimebag Darrell, that dude, there was only one, like one Vinnie Paul. There's only that guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you can almost say it's like, oh, that's him. That's Hetfield playing guitar. You kind of know it's him because he has that character, that thing, whether you like it or not. But I still fucking respect that. Like Dave Lombardo gets on the drums. I fucking know it's Dave Lombardo. Whether I like it or not, I totally respect that whole thing. And I'm not applying that knowledge to Spawn of Posession. I'm just saying that having character in music and the playing and the lyrics and the whole thing, that's really what counts in the end. It really is.
Well, you guys are, dude, you guys are like that to us, like such big influences, like we were saying before. And, it's like bands, like it was so fun, like how even meeting Joel, like back in the day, it was like at the Aptos Club or whatever. And we were, we told the story where David's like, if you heard of, like, hey, what's up, man? You're into metal, what's up? And then David's like, you've heard of Deprecated? And then you're like, I don't know. Then you're like, have you heard of Spawn of Possession? And none of us knew. We were like, no, what's that? Check. And then, dude, you were like the ambassador of Spawn to us.
Yeah.
And then after that, we were addicted ever since. And also, I want to say, I think that, and I love all of your albums, but I think that like becoming a fan starting at Cabinet, because it was the time, that album is just, it's got the heavy breakdowns. It's got such good rhythms. It's not just shredding, it's so diverse and perfectly well-rounded, I think. So it's like, it's not just a one trick pony at all, and it's the way you guys do the tech stuff. Like it's so perfect, it's like,
thanks, man.
Tasteful.
That was also, even though we never said that, used that word maybe back then, but it was, and I also think we got lucky, like, the fucking Lennon and McCarthy's and Mick and Keith and all those. It was like when like Jonas would bring the riffs to practice, and I was so into the arrangement stuff, thinking in terms of in drums and those kind of dynamics, and we've never had an argument ever about like where a riff should be. Seriously, like ever. We always, and I played in bands, we're constantly fighting, like constantly, like no, and there was a lot of prestige, and it's like, well, my riff is more like blah blah blah. We never had that. It was always like, whoever's got to bring it to the table, we'll see where it works and we'll put it in. And it was almost like a singular mind that way, that we always knew, we always thought the same with this stuff, and there was never any discussions ever. We were always open to each other's ideas, and when it worked, we both was like nodding, like, yep, that's it. It's like done. We totally knew, and that's sort of a happy coincidence that things worked out. And I think that maybe helped make Spawn become what it became.
I got a question, and it's kind of dorky because if it's your own music, but did you guys ever have that moment, like, I mean, you must have, like when you like made Cabinet and you like heard it back and you're like, oh, yes, like we killed it. I mean, I know it's kind of dorky, but
you mean like when you first hear like the playback?
Yeah, and you're just like, or were you like constantly critical, or what? Did you ever get satisfied?
I'll tell you where my moment was. That we had recorded the entire thing, and the guy said he was going to mix it, and he said, listen, I'm going to need 3 days to pre-mix this. Don't bother me. I'm going to set a bunch of levels. I'm going to tweak. I'm going to put in, compressions, blah, blah, blah. So he said, I think it was 3 days, at least 2. And he said, so go away, play Xbox. And that's what we did. And I think Jonas sat next to him through the whole thing, I'm pretty sure. But I went away. I was so fried anyway. And then they woke me up in the morning, 10 o'clock. It's like, what's up? Like, and I just remember Nick saying, hey, you got to come down and listen to this. I was like, well, what's up? No. Come on. Shut the fuck up. Get dressed. Come on. And listen. Because we slept on a loft. And I go down and I get like, sit down. They had all heard it. And I sat down in the center of the studio with the great big fucking super expensive, speakers and all that stuff. And they played, he had started mixing a song Hidden in Flesh.
That's my favorite on that album.
Yeah, and he cranked it in those fucking, what's it called? Genelic or something, like really high-end speakers. And it's like, dum, dum, ba, ba, da, dum, dum, da, da, da. And I just remember I got like just chills all over my body. That was my moment. I was like, whoa. And I was like, I tried not to pay attention to the drums, just to listen to the overall thing. And it was fucking heavy. And I was like, man, we have a record here, man. This is cool. And I think that, and he used that song as sort of the blueprint for the rest of the songs. I think that if you would ask the producer, he would say that song is the one that's best mixed, because that was the one he spent most time on. And I just remember, shit, this is beyond what we could have dreamed of, really, And it's interesting. I mean, we brought a whole bag of CDs to the studio because, like I said, he was into metal and some thrash, a death metal band here, there, but nothing big. So he was like, bring down CDs. We brought all kinds of stuff, like Every More Sound, fucking, the New York bands, Canada, the LA scene, like all we could find, bring all that stuff down. And he would listen to it and go, okay, interesting. Well, that snare, that. And then he made something that didn't sound like any of it. It was kind of funny. It didn't sound like your typical Morris Sound or Abyss in Sweden where half the Swedish bands recorded. It was like, what is this? Like, but it like you said, it worked. It was really, that was a pretty cool moment,
Yeah, I went to like I said, the extreme of how unique that album sounded. I was emailing Rob Flatpick. I was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? How did you get these sounds? I've never heard anything like this. And yeah, and it stands out like, like an Epitaph does too. Like that's got its own sound, or like, it's definitely got this like, it's not like super highly overproduced crazy stuff. It's like this real raw sound that's filling, and it doesn't, it's not like all these fancy bells and whistles and stuff. It's just raw in your face and you can hear everything, and just has this like weird kind of aggression that I can't even explain. It's, to this day, there's not really an album I could really put next to it to really compare,
Yeah, and that's an excellent point you bring up, because that was another thing that Jonas especially pushed on, that he didn't want it to be too clean or too prestige. He wanted to have some sort of old school feel. You can totally hear it on Incurso. We talked about it. He was like, I want the sound to be dirty, but not, it should be, you should be able to hear everything. But he was like, don't cut the guitars in every break, and they should ring out a little more natural and stuff like that. Just the details. And like you said, like it adds. And we had several room mics on all the drum sessions that he would put into the mix. So you get sort of a slam going. It sounds more live and more natural, and not so overly produced, So yeah, you make a very good point.
And still to this day, I love hearing the human aspects of all albums that I listen to, and it's like human, but it's fucking like perfect sounding to me, dude. It's like,
cool.
It really is. It's like right in the pocket, dude.
Yeah.
Everything that I'm looking for is that record, dude.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Fuck.
Sorry, I know we're fucking I mean, dude, we got Dennis from Spawn and Possession on the episode, dude. We gotta fucking spill it all out.
Yeah, we're just getting started, dude.
We haven't started crying yet. We're gonna start crying on the podcast.
Yeah.
No, I hope you get Jonas on.
I am friends with him on Facebook, but I've never actually interacted with him. I had the idea to ask him or anything, but he probably, I don't know if he.
I for some reason thought that he like didn't speak English very well or something. I thought he was mainly Swedish or something. Is what I kind of got. I didn't know if that's true or not, but maybe all of his posts are just full Swedish stuff. I'm just like, okay, well, I don't know if he really speaks English that well. I didn't know.
No, I think he can carry himself, but he always left this stuff to me. He's not a shy person, but he's not into.
Well, the way you've spoken about him during this episode makes me want to talk to him for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we could set up.
I'm seriously, I'm gonna talk to him, and maybe we could do it together, like him and me.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done part twos already, so, and we've got some that, want to be part twos as well. So it's like,
yeah,
you guys, we've said it. We kind of have an open door policy for every guest that's been on, dude. Cool. You can come back on whenever you want, dude. We love talking to everybody.
I love to come back, man.
This
is so cool, because I thought about it, beyond music, I'm into so much other things in my life. Like I'm interested in all kinds of shit. So I think to myself, like, oh, are we gonna like approach that stuff? But you know what? There's so much to talk about Spawn. Like I'm now I haven't talked about Spawn in so long.
And that's what we've noticed as well with these episodes, is that we're starting to get more people say that about our guests. Like, I've never heard this person talk for this long and talk about these things before. So it's like, and we're getting it ourselves as well. So it's like that's why this thing may be growing, the way that it is, because we're getting to dig on the stuff that we wish we heard or read back in the day that we never got. And now we get it firsthand right here in a conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten into any tour stories or anything. I mean,
I know, that's what I'm saying, dude. These part twos are definitely a good idea, dude.
Dude, we played tons of festivals, especially one summer. We played, I don't know how many. We played every weekend. We flew over all over Europe and played Italy and Germany and all these crazy places. And of course, we toured with Cannibal, and it was funny too. Like, Cannibal put up this definitive documentary about the band, I don't know what it's called, but it's like
It's that box set thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
And they actually mentioned an incident that we were part of when we went to Belarus. I don't know if you're familiar with that country, but it's a dictatorship, and they wouldn't let us in. And Cannibal's like determined to. We have fans there. We got to play. Fucking they had to bribe the security at the border, and then we got in, and it was like once we got in, we had like the Ukrainian promoter with us in the bus, so they had flown over so they could go with us because this was kind of touchy. And they get a call from the promoter in Belarus, and he goes like, dude, do not come to the club. We're fucked. Get the fuck out. That was it.
Jesus.
And they were crying. It was like a big deal. And I didn't get, I was kind of drunk as usual. So I was like, well, what's going on? What's up? And they were like, well, the government figured out that it's like Cannibal and Spawn Obsession coming here. It was only the two of us. And you're not allowed to play in Belarus because the promoter lied. Told some cockamamie fucking bullshit story about us. So do not go, because at the club there's like 3,000 kids banging on the door waiting for you because we got held up at the border. And they're sending out like military police to disperse them and fucking with water cannons and batons and all that shit. Get out. So we had to get out. And once we were going to get out, they wouldn't let us out. And then we finally get out, and the fucking, I think it was in Ukraine, they said, no, you can't come in. I was like, what? Why? And they were like, no, you have a trailer full of gear. We think you're going to sell that shit in this country. And I don't know if you know anything about Europe, the European countries and the Eastern Europe and stuff, but trust me, you don't go there to sell a guitar that you paid like fucking, $2,000 for. So it was like, what? So we actually got like you remember in like old James Bond films, they had the KGB drove those police cars. We got one of those with two dudes two Russian. They looked like fucking KGB. They would escort us out of Ukraine, and we drove over the fucking Carpathians. And I was like, oh, Carpathians, that's Dracula. That's fucking werewolves and blah, blah. That's going to be awesome. There are no fucking roads. Like no roads. So the bus broke down, all the windows broke, the transaxle broke, flat tires, everything. It was, trust me, it was brutal. It was, and we hadn't showered, we hadn't eaten, we hadn't gone to shit. So at one point they stopped the bus, and Cannibal and Spawn just ran into the woods and took a shit. I'm telling you, dude, it was brutal. Yeah. Well,
we complain about the fucking shit that we went through on there for bloodletting, dude. That's nothing, dude. None of that.
No,
sleeping under trees was fine, dude. They had to fucking go through all that shit that he just said, dude.
I know,
I'd be done, dude. I'd be like, what the fuck is going on?
It was brutal.
Yeah, just pretty much. I mean, nothing close to that. I mean, even with Decrepit and stuff, it would just be like maybe a breakdown or something, miss a show, or
but on I don't know if you know about that, the Bloodletting tour, the incident in I think it was Houston.
The bus fire? No, that was for Cannibal. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, we get to Houston. You guys want to hear this?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just cool.
Definitely.
I just feel like I'm rambling on. You have
no,
go
it's
for
all
it.
good, dude. This is what we want.
So we get to Houston, right? I think it's Houston. Okay, so and we park in this sort of industrial area, and the other side of the road is a trailer park, and it's all these, white trash sort of cowboy has barbecue on the street, the whole thing, like beautiful. I've never seen this in reality, and they invite us to barbecue and all that stuff. It's great. So we're playing this little shed. It's like a little shed, and it's sort of a festival. So we're playing, and we do our set, and we go to merch, and Mike Hamilton from Deeds was a tour manager on that tour. Fucking Mike is awesome, right?
Yeah,
so we're standing at the merch, having a beer and just having fun, and these two dudes comes in, and they're so out of place. One of them has like a pink one piece all the way up with a lot of bling and gold and big shades. He's like carrying himself with this sort of like tude, and his buddies sort of same thing. And the crowd just splits open and they go through. And I'm like, start pointing and like, look at those clowns. What the fuck? No, those dudes are fucking, that's gang, man. Those are gang people. Like, come on. You look silly. What are you talking about? Well, Mike was, of course he was right. So they beat up the sound guy out of the blue. They jump the guy and they fucking smash him. We don't see it because it's in the other room, but all of a sudden all this commotion starts. And we're like, what's going on? Well, this and that. And so they beat this guy, like he passes out. It's brutal. And they split. And next thing you know, I mean, me coming from Sweden, like 4 or 5 cop cars comes in with these Texas cops with the flashlights and the hand on the guns, like on the ground, blah, blah. And I'm like living in an episode of Cops. This is amazing. Like, what's going on? Well, come on, dude. And it's like, yeah. And Mike is like, no, don't get involved. Like, fuck it. And so they're like walking around there and like, hey, what the fuck? And it was very much like Mike said. These guys are like part of some crew. Okay, so the cops are like, yeah, whatever, it's cool now. So they leave. And it's a funny detail is when the cops arrive, I'm like, I'm gonna go into the tour bus, and there's the Gorgasm guys smoking weed, like, yeah, what's up, dude? It's like, well, we have cops around. Yeah, I'll give them a joint. It's okay. It's fuck that, you know. Those dudes were so relaxed, they didn't care. I was like, oh man. So anyway, the cops leave. And then we're standing there, and the promoter comes up to Mike and whispers something. And Mike goes, get your boys. We're getting the fuck out. So it turns out that these dudes were part of a local gang, and the word was out that they were going to shoot up the club.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, and Mike was really serious about it. And Mike is the big jokester, but he was like, I'm not joking, dude. I was laughing. And he was like, no, this is not funny. We got to go. So I think Gorgasm had to cut their set. It was like, no, not Gorgasm. Paemia had to cut their set. It was like, no, let's go. So they basically cleaned the whole place, and we had to leave. I don't know if they ever came by and shut up the club or anything, but it was, the rumor was that they were going to basically start shit, because when they beat up the sound guy, some other people had jumped them, so it was like payback time or something. That was intense.
This is ridiculous because they came in and started the shit, you know.
Yeah,
fucking people.
Jesus.
God, that's
what a story,
man. Yeah. I know Whitechapel one time. There's like we played a show with Suffocation in Whitechapel, and the like hardcore, metalcore, deathcore music has like crews of people, like gangs, but they're fans of the music. They're like in the scene of the music and stuff like that, but they're like still crews or gangs, we're gonna call them. And yeah, we got the word that they were gonna shoot Whitechapel on stage or something like that, and we were just like, what the hell? And they were like all on their phones, all freaked out in the backstage, and I'm like, I thought it wasn't gonna happen, but it ended up just beefing up security and checking everyone, like double checking everyone, and just having that fear. I was like freaked out too. It was like Long Island, like I was, honestly thinking like something's going to go down here. It's, it's an aggressive, like the East Coast is, and actually it's funny that you bring up the cowboy thing too, because I remember when we our first tour, we had Erland that played on Incurso. We had him in Vile. He was playing in Vile, and he wanted, his number one thing was to like take pictures. Like he's all, I need to go, you need to stop. Oh, yeah. And like he wanted us to like take a picture of him in front of a trailer park, in front of a Walmart, in front of like all the white trash American things. He wanted like pictures in front of all like the most white trash thing he could find. He wanted the picture,
Yep. The reason I think is because here in Europe we've been sold like as I grew up through the 80s, and I was sold like America was this beautiful, everything's like beautiful shiny skyscrapers and palm trees, and I mean it's just so beautiful. Los Angeles is so beautiful, really. I mean that's the way we that's how it's fed to us. And then when I got over there, and I remember we played a show in San Diego, and we hung out with the Scorched guys and Diego and those cats, like so cool. And I just remember thinking, the movie that really depicted Los Angeles the way I see it now was Pulp Fiction. The way Quentin Tarantino shot the streets, I mean, it's not very many, but the way the diner, that stuff, it was, for me, it was spot on. Like, okay, now I get it. This is how it looks. It wasn't like LA Law that I grew up with. Everything was just like very crisp and nice and everything. It's kind of interesting, So I understand in a way where Erland is coming from,
Yeah.
To get that.
Yeah.
People of today are living or rather, they want to live the American dream and all that stuff, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a little different than what's depicted, for sure.
I think at this point, like, the Swedish dream is sounding pretty good right now.
Yeah, I know. I think now we want to go over there now.
I'm kind of curious. A random question. So, like people who live in countries that are near each other, like, kind of know the languages of the other countries a bit and stuff like that. Like, Erland's from Norway, right?
Yeah.
Does he speak any Swedish? Do you guys speak any Norwegian? Do you guys just talk in English? Just curious.
No, but it turned out when we did Incurso tour, and me and Erland we spoke in English. But he also said, like, because I come from the East Coast, and he lives in Norway, which is closer to the West Coast. So he said, when I meet people from the West Coast, we can talk, we can have a full conversation, but I couldn't really have conversation with them. And it's a dialect thing, basically. And that's why some of the bands, you remember in the early 90s, with the black metal scene, when that was happening, there was bands like Dissection and those guys. Yeah. They lived way up the West Coast. So they could, I guess, I don't know, but something tells me that they could sort of communicate in a different way than I would. I make it easy for myself. I have a lot of relatives. My dad is from Denmark, but like most parts of Denmark, I don't understand what they're talking about. But some people, like my cousin, he makes himself. It's another thing also, like making yourself understood. You know what I mean? He talks slowly and sort of try to be articulate, and then I sort of understand what he says. But in Scandinavia, I guess with a gun to my head, I could totally understand, but most of the time it's pretty hard. It's like a really brutally different dialect, but it's a spawn from the same whatever. It's the same language and the sort of Viking whatever where it came from. So yeah, but that's interesting. Cool. I mean, you guys. In America, it's English all the way, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you speak English so well right now, and English is the only fucking language that I know.
Oh, thank you.
It's like when all these multilingual people make me feel like a piece of shit for not paying attention to Spanish in high school, dude.
No, but you have to understand, like, I think most Swedes speak English pretty well. Yeah. And the reason, of course, and Europeans in general, except for the French and the Germans, because I'm not slamming them, but they have they get dubbed television. We don't. We have the subtitles. I grew up with all the fucking TV shows and all the Al Bundy and the fucking you name it, all that stuff.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not to mention the movies.
The
movies. Yeah, I love movies. I watch it all the time, and I heard, and I got to tell you, speaking of that, this is really just beside the point, but it's really interesting. I heard this really industrial sort of, he's consul. No, not a consul. He's what the fuck do you call that when you hire someone to, elevate your company? Someone who's
consultant.
Consultant. Thank you.
Yeah.
And he's been around and he's worked for some of the biggest major countries in the world. And he's written a book on, 100 rules to become successful, whatever. And one of the things he says, he says, never, ever, ever have an argument over text message or email, ever. That's one of these rules. Always in person, over the phone or in person. But that's not the one. The one I reacted to was, he said to Swedish people, he said, do not speak English, speak American. Because when I went to school, it was English, like Oxford, sort of, the British sort of BBC sort of thing.
Yeah.
But he said, that's not our influence. Our influence is in American culture, television, video games, movies, shit like that. And he said, you're only sort of, if you speak American, that's as close to the truth in what you're saying as you can come. And I feel way more comfortable speaking the way, and obviously I speak the way I do because you speak the way you do. It helps me, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I never speak English in that sense. I speak like trashy. That this is sort of,
Totally.
Even in America, we have our own dialects. Like you're talking about, like the what's up, y'all? Like all the Southern dialects, and then you have the East Coast. Going like, hey, how you doing? All that stuff. Then you have like us over on the kind of surfer West Coast. We kind of have a what's up, dude?
What's up,
like,
bro?
Kind of
like.
I
mean, that's my favorite in a way, because it's so like the one you guys have is it's just so laid back, and it just sounds so. I remember that, like going on tour where we were like, paying attention to the dialects and everything. And as soon as I got to New York and Philadelphia, and those guys, it was like Goodfellas in my head all the way. Yeah, Tony, what do you want? The whole thing they have.
Yeah. Well, I remember too, even like being like younger and like growing up and being influenced by like, say, Deeds of Flesh or like California death metal bands that are growling and all intense, and I'm listening to bands all around the world and this and that. But I remember like the first time I talked to Eric on the phone, she's like, "What's up, dude? How's it going, man?" Like just like, what? You're that guy? Like,
It's like, this reminds me of who's the guy, singer John from Dying Fetus. Like he just looks so aggressive on stage. He's all, "Hey man, what's going on, dude?" After I'm like, "Geez, that's you." Oh, they're gonna be all like intense.
The first tour we did with Cannibal was on it was a festival called No Mercy Fest. Was in 2004, and I just remember getting a sneak peek into their bus. And I mean, we're talking, this is Cannibal Corpse, this is Fucked with a Knife, this is Addicted to Vaginal Skin, this is like Hammer Smash. I mean, come on, I Come Blood, what are you talking about? And I'm looking in, and there's like Alex and the guys like with reading glasses on, reading books. And the fucking boss like, "Hey man, what's up?" It didn't make any sense to me at the time. It's like, "Hey, what?" The coolest guys ever. I just want, for the record, like
totally,
dude. Fuck,
I've gotten the privilege to hang out with those guys a few times, and they're all cool dudes. They're just, they're normal people, just like all of us, dude.
Yeah. And that's another thing regarding Spawn, is that we owe them a lot, because they brought us on tour and they just took us in and was like, well, let's give these guys a break. Alex Webster sort of acknowledged us, and it was so bizarre when I spoke to Alex the first couple of times, and he was talking to me like a fan. That was the most bizarre thing ever. I mean, I remember I was like 15, having like a Butcher to Birth hat. No, I was probably 17 or something, and I had that fucking hat on, and he was just the coolest guy on the planet, just super nice. And
he's definitely a big fan of the Unique Leader, like old roster, dude.
Yeah,
I mean, you see him in documentaries, he's wearing a Severed Savior shirt, and it's just like, he just knows what's up with the Cali shit. Dude. And obviously Swedish shit.
Yeah, he's always on the lookout for new great bands, Whereas, and that's another thing. Like when we toured, it was funny because, and this happens to, I think, most bands, especially if you're like on a headline bill or something, we got home with a box full of CDs and tapes, and not tapes, maybe, but CDs, all kinds of demos and stuff, and super fun to plow through that and see what's up. And obviously someone like Alex Webster, he takes that to a new level. He's like, well, these guys are great. I'm going to write them an email and see what's up, and I give him all the props. That's just the way to do it. I think most bands don't care. It's like you take that step up, and it's like, oh, fuck the underground. I'm making money.
It's basically like him and Trevor from Black Dahlia. They both like are way into music, and they want to bring out bands that they like and get them exposure. Like they take that extra step to bring out stuff that they're interested in, and
or Dan Kenny. It sounds like from Suicide. Silence.
Yeah. There's people out there that are, in some of these bigger bands. There's a few of them that are just hungry to, expose what they're listening to everyone.
Yeah, and also it's cool too that they're not threatened by that whole thing. Because I remember, I think it was the first tour we did with Cannibal. I didn't know the code between bands, but they had a couple of girls that was running the merchandise, and they helped us set up the merch. It was like, yeah, we can do the merch like 10%, and we'll take care of it. And they put this really high price on our shirts. And I kind of reacted. I was like, why would you do that? And she was like, well, you can't have a lower price than the headliner because, people want to get a shirt, whatever it is and stuff. And I get that. I totally respected that. Well, 3 shows in, it was like, well, Alex and the guy said, you can lower it. It's okay because you guys need to sell more shirts. Like just a gesture like that. They had no reason to do that, but they were just way cool about it. It's like, I didn't even know about those politics before we started touring. But that was just a nice thing, It's like awesome.
Definitely. That definitely helps, dude.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of sure, I can give you another tour trivia, like a real, like slightly scary.
And then after that, we're gonna have to cut it because I'm sorry, I forgot to mention I got a hard out in like 10 minutes, guys.
Oh shit!
Sounds good.
Yeah.
How long have we been going?
Almost 3 hours, I think.
Oh shit! We'll save that one.
That's okay. I want to hear it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we still got a few. We still got a few more minutes,
and then we'll wrap it. Okay. Please.
So we're
I wish I could be here all night, dude, or all day for me, all night for you.
No, we're playing Milan with Cannibal Corpse on the big tour package. It was us. Let me think. It was us, Cannibal, Hypocrisy, Cataclysm, Carpathian Forest, Exhumed, and Vomitory. It was pretty solid. And so we're playing Milan, and I get out of the bus, and I'm hungover like crazy, and walking towards the club. And the first thing I see is these, sort of tents where they're selling gnobs and shirts and shit like that. And I see Spawn Obsession shirts. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are these shirts? And they're misspelled, and the logo's all messed up. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm starting to get like, wait a minute, come on, this is not cool, blah, blah. And then one of the merch girls comes up to me and goes, no. Fuck that. Leave that alone. I'm like, what? No. Shut up. The whole fucking place was run by the mob. It's like, yeah, it was like that thing going on. I had no idea. Another tour thing you learn when you go to Italy or Sicily or something like that. It's for real. It's just like, no, don't fuck around with this. So we play the show and everything, and we're backstage, and it's like all these bands have bands all over the place, people all over the place, sitting there drinking beer, and all of a sudden these 2 big fucking biker dudes. I'm not going to say what club they were, but there was a very famous club, and they come in and they go straight up to tour manager, and he just takes out a big fat fucking letter with full of money. He goes like, "Here you go," and there's thank you, and then they leave. Because it's percentage of the show. And it was like, ooh. And you don't want to mess around there. You don't want to start, you don't want to pick a fight with anybody in a place like that. Oh, well, scary show like that. But as long as you follow the rules, it's all good,
Yeah, crazy, man. Yeah, you guys have seen it and lived it. Jeez, this makes me feel like after all the tours I've done, I don't have anything cool like that to add, really. That's,
except for maybe almost freezing to death in the back of a truck.
Yeah, and stuff like that
too.
No mobster stories.
Part of death metal is that it has that attitude and touches with that side of life that I don't know how many kids grow up now ever gonna have that experience, but it's there. Totally. You might miss that part if all you do is listen on your computer and are a fan from home. So that's cool to hear those kinds of stories for sure.
Well, that's the real brutal part of the music is trying to tour it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More brutal than the songs or the content or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think when you have a like all you guys, it's clear. I mean, if you have a distance to it, you can sort of laugh about it. Maybe it's not in the moment so funny, but then you sort of go like, we survived, you kind of can laugh about it and talk about it, if you have that sort of distance, you can go tour. It's okay. You know,
Yeah.
it couldn't be worse. And I'll tell you, man, we never went to South America. We were actually, there were a few times where we got offers and stuff, but they told us, like on the Cannibal tours, like when we toured Eastern Europe, that was brutal. Like the roads were really bad, and it was just like bribes left and right, and it was crazy. But I was like, it doesn't get worse than this. And they were like, no, you haven't been to South America yet. Go down to Colombia, Bolivia, and those countries. But of course, you go there because the fans are fucking crazy. I mean,
Rabid.
they love it down there. You'll pull 3,000 kids or 10,000 a night. It's crazy, you know. So that's still a dream that I hope maybe someday we can go down.
Did you guys ever get offers for Indonesia?
Yeah, many times.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
never.
Yeah.
I don't.
We should
know
do
about
a To Violently Vomit Spawn of Possession Indonesian tour, man. Just throwing it out there.
that. Yeah.
We got one for next year, hopefully. But yeah, man. Should we wrap this up, guys? It's so
guys.
fucking nice to
I
talk
wish
to you,
we
Dennis.
could keep going.
Yeah.
Dude,
We'll hang
Yeah.
out a little bit after Anthony leaves, but we'll stop the recording right now.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks again,
Thank
Dennis.
you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is amazing. So much
Awesome,
fun.
dude.
Dude,
I'm glad you had a
thank
good
you,
time
man.
because we had a blast as well, dude.
Yeah.
This is, right in the pocket, right where we want these kinds of episodes to be, dude. We get some good information that, we got to dig. We got to have some fun. It's all good, dude. And you're, like I said, you're welcome back again anytime. Get Jonas on here. That's a big bonus,
I'm gonna see
Get
what
a
I can do.
6-panel thing going.
Yeah.
But yeah,
See what I
dude.
can do.
And there's Spawn of Possession merchandise out there somewhere, right?
Oh,
Band
yeah, I'm
camps
sure.
and all that shit.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Go
Go
support
rip it.
But yeah,
I got nothing to plug.
cool, dude. Well, awesome. So episode 37 in the bag. CaliDeath.com. Hit us up on Instagram and Facebook and all that good shit. Thanks again to the subscribers, thumbs up, notifications. If you're a Apple Podcast person, give us a 5-star rating, review, all that kind of shit. But yeah, we'll be here again next week for episode 38. You guys have a great week. Rock on.
You.